Hey everybody, welcome back to another ASUS PCDIY hardware live stream. It's JJ. It's been a little bit since I actually think maybe about a month ago, but happy to be back, guys, and be able to go ahead and kick off another PCDIY stream. I think this is actually 120, so congrats for us all when we get to 120. Hopefully everybody's having a good Friday, enjoying your day, staying safe and staying healthy, getting ready for the weekend. So we've got a ton of different things to cover in this week's stream. We're going to be doing a bit of a recap of Computex 2024. So you guys have probably seen some, different varying content online in terms of different maybe media that might have been reporting on Computex, or maybe, of course, you're part of our PCDIY group or checked out our social channels, then you might have seen that. So definitely there's a lot to cover there. But in addition to that, we've also, of course, got a number of new product announcements that essentially are following up from Computex, which we'll also go ahead and be touching on. So we've got a little bit of everything from the latest generation of peripherals, like the new Azoth Extreme, the Harpe Extreme, new monitors under the ROG lineup that we're going to be talking about. We've got our new Delta II gaming headset that's going to be coming out. We've got 5K and 6K ProArt based monitors that we're going to be touching on. We've got the new ROG Thor 3 series that we're going to be talking about. We've also got some new XG series monitors, which hit in that really nice sweet spot on the market that we're going to be talking about as well, that are going to be coming to the market, and quite a number of things that we're just going to be throwing in there, including a brand new series of graphics cards. 2024 has seen a lot in terms of kind of us continue to flesh out the overall kind of product stack, and this now we're going to be adding in our Prime series graphics cards, so we're going to be talking about that and a whole lot more. So let's see who we have joining us today in the stream today. So we've got Mike joining us. Fantastic, man. Thanks so much for joining us today, Mike. Happy to see Michael also up north in Canada, man. So thank you for joining us here. Great to have you here. Jack, I think we've gone ahead and toned back our intro music there, so you shouldn't be hearing any more music on that side, so hopefully everything's okay. Of course, we have Erica joining us, always letting us know that the audio is checking out great, so fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today, Erica, letting us know. Michael says, can we tune up the volume? Let's go ahead and see a little bit of feedback from everybody else. If everybody thinks that the mic level is good, maybe on your side you can maybe turn it up, but if anybody feels that we want to go ahead and crank it up a little bit more, let me know, and we'll go ahead and make an adjustment there to the mic levels. Daniel, thanks for joining us. PD, man, thanks for joining us. Pidgey PCs, man, fantastic to have you here as well, so thank you so much. GPS Stuntman, man, always great to see you here joining us on the stream as well. So thank you for everybody joining us on here. All right, hey, Blueberry, fantastic to have you here, man. Thanks again so much. So let's get ready to go ahead and kick things off. I think probably the way that I want to approach it is probably first and foremost talking a little bit about a big update that we have for our PCDIY group. So let me go ahead and get into that one, I think, first and foremost. So let me go ahead and talk about it. So for many of you, hopefully you're already part of our PCDIY community. It's a fantastic community that we have, which is actually on Facebook. It's part of Facebook groups. It's over 50,000 members. We started it around about 4 years ago. It's a great space to be able to allow for pretty much anybody that's interested in the PCDIY experience and all of the aspects and components that relate to PCDIY, whether it's going to be anything from, of course, building a system to upgrading a system, overclocking, all right, any of those premises and topics, as well as, of course, staying up to date with the latest and greatest news, being able to see build inspiration, and a whole lot more within this community. But as we've seen continued changes in terms of the way that the platform is structured, we've ultimately felt that there's an opportunity, I think, to be able to kind of really maximize, I think, the opportunity of how we can approach engaging with the community, even be able to provide more kind of finite structure to different types of product lines, different types of series, as well as different types of content, whether it might be something like upgrading versus overclocking, whether it's full builds, as well as being able to segment more clearly aspects like, let's say, content creation based builds and products that might fall underneath that versus, let's say, gaming related kind of pursuits, right? And even there's so many other kind of things that get into PCDI, whether maybe you're somebody that's interested in non-RGB versus RGB, small form factor versus traditional size builds, and so much more. So what we're ultimately going to be doing as we get ready to get into the next kind of quarter for the year, so for Q3, we're going to be looking to actually start off actually a brand new community. So we're not going to be leveraging a pre-existing, let's say, social-based platform like you might have with not only Facebook groups or things like Discord. We're actually going to be having an owned platform community space. And the big benefit that we see with that owned platform community space is that we'll be able to ensure, I think, the best structure in terms of something that really complements, again, the goal of what we want to try to do with our PCDIY community, giving clear visibility to, like I said, different types of product categories, being able to develop things like owner club concepts, so that if maybe you're somebody that is jumping in and joining in maybe the latest generation of builders on a specific GPU or a specific motherboard, there's a specific thread in a specific corresponding group that might be just associated towards just those products. Also to allow for clarity in terms of updates, having a more robust calendar system, more comprehensive search functionality. There's a lot of other things that we have baked in as well in terms of kind of long-standing kind of concepts that we wanted to put in place, whether that's going to be specialized like monthly giveaways, specialized community beta testing programs, and a whole lot more that we're really excited about. So in the coming weeks, we're actually going to have a lot more information regarding this. We're going to have probably a little bit of a test pilot, I think, for a smaller number of individuals that kind of want to test things out for us in terms of our transition from the Facebook group to the new community platform before we essentially allow for a larger scale invite to the majority of our community as a whole. If you're interested in being part of this, feel free to go ahead and check out the post that we have right now in our PCDIY group. There's a form that you can go ahead and fill out. Just ask for a little bit of clarification, a little bit more information from there, and then we can go ahead and follow up with you in terms of getting you initially kind of onboarded in terms of that. I can tell you though, I'm very excited after talking with our marketing director, I think, about the scope of what we're going to have planned and a lot of the activations and strategies and things that we're going to have in place for the new group. And I'm very excited to, I think, have one space that's really isolated and dedicated just for this, and not necessarily have to deal with a lot of the other things that sometimes exist with other social platforms. And so this really can be focused at just really leveraging the core tenets of what we want to really drive within this kind of community in this space. So I'm really, really excited about it. And you're going to, of course, continue to see myself, you continue to see Lee, and we'll continue to expand on, of course, our moderation team, and hopefully over time, as well as our admin team, and kind of go from there. But I'm quite excited about it. So if you guys have any feedback, you have any questions, comments, I welcome you to go ahead and check out the community post that we have right now in the group that talks a little bit more about this, and also gives you the opportunity to be able to provide feedback. So definitely hoping that you guys check that out and you get ready with us to transition to the new platform as we get ready to go ahead and kick things off on that side. Sumin, man, happy to have you here. Thank you so much. So Chris says, yeah, having your own community is so much better than social media. Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a number of really cool things that we see with being able to leverage a social media platform like what we have with groups. There's, of course, a lot of great creators which might be natively already on some of these platforms, and allows them to easily kind of transition in. But at the same time, you kind of get in a lot of other things when it comes to the conversation that we feel that kind of add kind of unneeded noise to the totality of the conversation. Also, I think there's an issue algorithmically, right? Sometimes with certain platforms, what we see is that the discoverability or the presentation of what you see can be quite variable. And I think for a lot of people, when they're joining into the group, they really want to have a clear sense of knowing exactly what they're looking for. So they want to be able to get that real-time notification on product availability, or new features, or new functions, new BIOS updates, or have it really clear and structured in terms of being able to dive into this one specific product category. Maybe you have more interest about motherboards and graphics cards and monitors, but maybe you're not so much interested in networking, right? And I think being able to have clear, better defined structure with chronological ordering, although we'll have some other mechanisms to be able to, I think, enhance some variability to discoverability that'll be part of that. These are all things that we're really excited about putting in place. I also will note, though, that we will maintain essentially having a dual level of accessibility in terms of how the group will be able to be accessed. So it will be web-based, but it'll also be application-based. So with an application base, you can easily kind of be able to get notifications real time as kind of things come up, but you don't have to kind of worry about them being anything else, right? You're not going to get all this other noise. It would just really be specific to those updates that you're really most invested in about finding out, whether it's a new motherboard launch, or new graphics card launch, or this new product, or a new update, or maybe a specific conversation that's happening amongst just builders regarding a certain type of maybe build, or a certain type of product, or things along those lines. So a lot of really cool things. Again, really looking for your guys' feedback. We're looking to be able to enhance discussion. I think we might have maybe a targeted community discussion group before we kind of kick on the live session for this, maybe within the next month. So if you guys are interested in that, we'd love to go ahead and see your guys' commentary in that respect as well. So feel free to go ahead and drop your feedback again in the PCDIY group. Let me go ahead and see if I can bring up a link right now, and I'll drop that in the chat if anybody's interested in checking that out. Okay. So hey, X11, thanks for joining us, man. So very cool. Yeah, Blueberry says volume level. Let me go ahead and I'll turn that up a little bit more. So give me 1 second there. We'll go ahead and adjust that. Let me know how that's sounded for you guys. I went ahead and pumped it up a little bit more, and we'll go ahead and share over that link as well. So give me 1 second here. All right. So here we go, and we'll share that link over. Hey Mod, hey Ben, thanks. Yeah, thanks for that feedback. Yeah, it's it's always interesting to see how things kind of develop from a community perspective. But we think that this is kind of the best pathway forward in terms of just having, I think, things be really focused and not kind of obstructed by everything else that can be happening on other platforms, and just to really allow for a clear opportunity for the community to really focus in on the conversations and the products and the discussions that they're most interested in. We're also really excited about this for creators and builders that we work with, because then we even have more kind of targeted opportunities to be able to highlight and celebrate and be able to do things with different types of builders and modders and specialized community activations and programs. So there's a lot of other things that we think having the platform that we're going to have in place will allow for to kind of continue to just be able to do more and be able to approach with a higher level of flexibility. So very excited about that. We'll see how things come along. Again, our goal is probably to hopefully get things at least started in terms of initial kind of transition onboarding process, I'd say within about the next month or so, and probably, like I said, start to do maybe some beta development in terms of kind of test rollout with maybe a smaller subsection of the group, kind of testing some things out, seeing how structure and kind of certain moderation functions and other things kind of are working, within the next couple of weeks. So again, if anybody's interested, make sure to go ahead and check out the link that I've gone ahead and dropped in the chat, and we'll go from there. We've got Lano C's joining us, man. Fantastic. Thanks for joining us, man. Happy Friday. Very, very cool. Michael says that, thank you. I'm looking forward to the next. So I would agree with you. I'm looking forward to that as well. So let's get ready to go ahead and kick things off, guys. Let's jump, I think, straight into some of the cool stuff from Computex, because we've got a lot to be able to jump on that side. Before we get into that, one of the things that we kind of talked about a lot at Computex, if you guys saw some of the coverage, was, I think, BTF, right? So if you guys aren't aware, we recently launched kind of the BTF ecosystem pretty much towards the very end of April going into May, where we launched, of course, the TUF Gaming ecosystem, and we also launched the ROG ecosystem. So on the high-end side, you had the ROG-based ecosystem, right? So that would be with the Maximus Z79 Dark Hero, the ROG Hyperion, the ROG Strix GeForce RTX 4090 base graphics card. That was also kind of a black theme type of system. On the other side, in kind of that mid-range enthusiast sweet spot, we had the TUF Gaming with the TUF Gaming Z790 board. We had the GeForce RTX 4070 Ti super graphics card, the GT302 chassis. Really great option, very bold and bright. So for those of you kind of wondering, this is like an example here of one of the BTF based systems, but I do want to talk about something that we actually originally were not going to be bringing in, and we have gone ahead and made a transition update to actually add an additional board in the not too distant future for the BTF lineup. So here's an example, of course, of the current TUF Gaming BTF based ecosystem. And for those of you not aware, BTF is our, of course, Back to the Future, and essentially what this actually design is attempting to implement is a more kind of minimal design language when it comes to the cables that you would see in your system, as pretty much the motherboard has all of the connectors on the rear side. So that means that you just have a cleaner overall aesthetic for those that perceive cables to essentially kind of add noise to a build. I personally love cables. I like that they add contrast, texture, and color to a system, but definitely we are always looking to be able to provide different types of choice to builders. So the exciting update that I have for you is that some of you may be aware that we, of course, released a chassis not too long ago with the A21. So let me go ahead and bring up an example of the A21 here. And I think I should have it here. Yep. Let's go ahead and bring this up. A21. And the cool thing about the A21 was it was not too expensive of a chassis, but it was also going to offer you BTF compatibility. But one of the things is that we weren't going to be offering a micro ATX based option. So for those that were going to be interested in maybe going that route, they wouldn't have a choice. So now we actually do. So here you can see the A21 chassis. We offer it in black and in white, and ideally, of course, for this type of build, it would probably mean that you would want to go with the black-based motherboard that we're going to be talking about here in a moment. But you'll see it's a very compact-based chassis, but it's got lots of flexibility, lots of room in here. So you can see, if we talk about actually what you can fit in here, you can pretty much fit all of the largest type of components that you would want, but within a very compact and high airflow-based configuration. So micro ATX-based board, of course, large base graphics card, whether you're talking about something like our ProArt series, TUF Gaming, or ROG Strix series. You can fit a 360mm AIO there at the top. Very good porosity in terms of the front for a high level of airflow, so very, very good airflow in that respect. You don't have to worry about anything. And, price point on this chassis is quite reasonable. It's only coming in at $70, so it's not expensive. We've actually even run some promotions on it where it's even been a bit lower than that's actually default MSRP pricing. But you'll see right here is that in the back, when we take a look at the unit, you are actually going to have a rear cable design option available to you. So what's the board that we're going to now have available? Let me go ahead and bring this guy out here, and we'll take a look at the board that we're going to have. So it's going to be the TUF Gaming B760 BTF. And so this is going to be this guy right here. So let me go ahead and bring it up for you. So this is going to be, I think, a great choice for those that, again, are going to be looking for a board that, you know, you want to be able to build a kind of compact performant gaming system. You're not really focused maybe on overclocking. You just want to be able to kind of cover the core specifications and being able to drop in a performant based CPU, be able to load in your memory, your graphics card, some M.2 storage, and be able to be good to go, right? And that's really the key differential, again, between B and Z series based chipsets. Z series chipsets are going to support overclocking for both the CPU and for the DRAM. They also, just spec wise, will generally have higher end spec than the B series boards, which are going to be more in that entry to mid-range based positioning. But when we talk about really the overall core spec, a lot of the key things that somebody would want in terms of the number of slots on the board, in terms of DRAM, M.2 expansion, Wi-Fi, and your default USB connectivity are all going to be present here. So it's got a nice clean design aesthetic. You can of course see that it's got that shrouded based design because it's going to be a BTF based board, as you'll see that there's no corresponding connectors up here on the front of the motherboard. So if we go ahead and take a look here, let's go ahead and flip over to the rear I/O. I always like to talk a little bit about the rear I/O. You can see you got your HDMI, you got your DP, clear CMOS button, 4 legacy essentially USB 2 ports, great for things like your traditional peripherals. You've got 3 USB-C, which is nice, even though this is a B series based motherboard. I love the fact that we've got 3 USB-C ports on there. Probably for the vast majority of you, you probably only have maybe 1 USB-C actual device. 20 gigabits USB-C as well there, 5 gig, and 10 gig. So quite a bit of high-speed ports there, 2.5 gig networking, Wi-Fi 6, that does also include Bluetooth. So that's probably one of the only more notable things that maybe you're kind of dropping down compared to maybe some of the higher-end ATX-based boards, is that you don't have Wi-Fi 6E or you don't have Wi-Fi 7, which you would see on a higher-end based motherboard. But overall, really solid in terms of the overall connectivity options you have available to you on the board, right? And if we take a look, of course, at the black pane, if you guys haven't seen it, but probably for the majority you're now familiar with BTF, you'll see that, of course, all the connectors here are on the back. And we also do have some updated kind of color coding to help to reinforce where the connectors actually are in terms of primary importance, such as your 24-pin and your UPS power connectors, CPU power connectors, and things along those lines. So you can see those are all isolated out there for you, very clear. And of course, that would complement, again, that A21 chassis. So you could, of course, also put this in something like the GT302, that larger chassis that we showed, which is also available in black. You could entirely go that route, because that being an ATX based chassis, it can support micro ATX based motherboards. But probably for most of you, I think that you're going to want to probably go for a more compact board. So this is going to be the TUF Gaming B760M, as it's going to be micro ATX and BTF, and then Wi-Fi, as it does have Wi-Fi. Important to note here that there are 2 variants here, so just make sure and keep in mind we aren't going to be bringing the DDR4 variant that we've produced for this that might be seen in other regions. So this is only going to be DDR5, so it follows the naming convention that we have for our other motherboards. So again, this is only going to be a DDR5 based motherboard, not a DDR4 based board. So if you're going to be building a new system, you do need to make sure to account for that DDR5 memory, not that DDR4 memory. I will drop a link in terms of the product page for those of you that might be interested in checking this guy out. But that is going to be the TUF Gaming B760M Wi-Fi. So I think a great addition that we've got in here. And let me know, guys, you know, for your next build, do you have an inclination that you think you might be going towards BTF, or do you think you're going to still be going with a traditional build? What is your thoughts in terms of whether you're going to go for one or versus the other? Let me know in the comments which you're kind of leaning towards. Okay, so I will go ahead and drop that in the chat right there. So give me a second here, and I will do that. So that is going to be the TUF Gaming BTF, and I'll drop also the A21 chassis in there just for you guys as well, as that chassis just recently launched, and again, it's very reasonably priced in terms of the price point for the A21. Right now it's actually on sale, so normally it's $70, and right now it's on sale for $60 for the white version, and the black version is currently at standard MSRP pricing at $70. So let me go ahead and drop that in there. So that is the A21 chassis. And then I will go ahead and drop in also that TUF Gaming motherboard. That's going to be that B760M. And we'll see if there was a question right there. Mike is an A21 forever. Are you running an A21, Mike? It's a great. I think in one of the last streams, I think you noted right that you were going to be building something in it, if I don't remember correctly. M.2 on the back. No. This board, no. For the B760, actually, hold on. I linked the wrong one in there. Give me 1 second. It's not going to. And the main reason why you also have to still be considerate of maybe putting something on the back like an M.2 is, one is, in some situations you might be able to, of course, have a chassis be able to correspondingly like have the opening that you could still access the drive, right? But keep in mind that especially for some higher performing drives where you have to have heat sinks, that's adding an additional level of Z height, right, to the motherboard, and that essentially could potentially be making contact with the back plane, right, of where the motherboard would be mounted, and that wouldn't, of course, be great. So there's kind of like a tricky balance of trying to make sure that if you were to place a drive in there, that it probably wouldn't be a slot that you would want to prioritize the highest level of performance. For the majority of gamers, the reality is that there's not really kind of a key need to have to go to the highest end M.2 Gen 4, Gen 5 based drives, which of course are also going to be the most thermally sensitive, which really benefit from having a heatsink, right? Especially if you want to be able to maintain the best performance. But a lot of enthusiasts just kind of gravitate towards getting these higher performing drives, right? Because they're excited about, you know, the sequential numbers that they see advertised with them. But when you do really kind of measure general usage, whether it's kind of desktop application usage, web browsing performance, application installation, performance for games, and things like patching, pretty much the performance is pretty close to being on par. Now you'll start to see a bit more separation as you start to see more games actually start to leverage technologies like direct storage, which right now are just kind of in their infancy and they're starting off. And of course, if you're in the more professional workload space or you're running kind of more dynamic desktop usage, then you can definitely benefit from higher performing storage drives. But I think for a lot of just traditional gamers, you know, going with just a mid-range standard good quality Gen 4 drive is going to be more than enough, and you don't really have to so much worry about that. And that's something that we could account for in the design, but that's a tricky balance of kind of trying to know what the user may or may not want to be able to do, and then trying to correlate the design to best support either one of those configurations. So that's just something that we have to kind of be mindful of. But thank you for that question right there. All right. Hey, Tweet Down, man, fantastic to have you. Thanks so much for joining us here. Blueberry's going, does ASUS have any plans to make speakers or soundbar? So not anything immediate. It is something that we've had some discussions in terms of our product management team and our R&D team. So we are looking at a couple of things. We've got a couple of things kind of kicked around in the background that we're kind of trying out and kind of testing out, but nothing immediately that we wanted to disclose and develop. You know, there's a lot of really great solutions on the market, and you know, by default, I think the most interest that we've had from people is just, I think, enhancements or updates that we've had to our traditional product stack, whether it's going to be things like our headsets or like true wireless based solutions, which we have come to market with, right? But I would definitely phrase it from don't be surprised if essentially you did see something like a soundbar or like a speaker from us sometime in the future. But as of right now, nothing to disclose, nothing to confirm, but it is something that we are aware that there's people that have interest in, and I think even kind of thematically kind of trying to be able to integrate it in. We've also looked at maybe some options for like integrating certain kind of like higher performing like soundbars into maybe something like our ROG Swift displays. So maybe developing something like a specialized like pogo pin magnetic system, where we might have something like a high performance bar that you could undermount onto a display. Maybe it doesn't come default with it, but it could be like an accessory for users that wanted to be able to have, you know, maybe a higher quality of maybe a center channel audio experience, or maybe high quality stereo, you know, or just kind of situations where they don't necessarily want to have to use headphones or use, you know, maybe more kind of standard kind of bookshelf type speakers, which also kind of can take more space. So there are a number of different things we're evaluating, but again, nothing right now. Okay. All right. Hey, MMHRB, happy to have you here, man, right there. Eric says, I saw the announcements for the ROG Delta II. Hope to hear the sample of the mic quality soon. I definitely would agree. There's quite a number of different updates that we've done there on that site. Should be pretty cool. Michael asked the question, is that for future motherboards, be it TUF or ROG, can the design be so that one can easily swap out the Wi-Fi cards to upgrade? So in most situations, generally for most motherboards, when they do usually have Wi-Fi, let me see if I have one over here. Yeah, so this one has Wi-Fi. Most of the time, generally, the module is actually pretty straightforward. So you would have to kind of remove this. So you would have to you would have to remove the screws for the actual heatsink assembly, remove that off, and then you would actually find the M.2 key module that could actually be removed. It's inside of a shielded housing. Now, some people might go like, well, that doesn't necessarily make it easier, but ideally for the best RF attenuation performance, we do generally want to kind of shield it and maximize that. So that is one of the reasons why we do that, but you can generally replace it. In most situations, you're generally not going to find that the M.2 module in itself is going to be soldered. So it is something essentially you could upgrade. So even though, take for instance, that motherboard had Wi-Fi 6, if you wanted to go to Wi-Fi 6E or Wi-Fi 7 and replace that, you could. So in the vast majority boards, that is going to be an option. It just might take a little bit of work to maybe remove one of the shrouds and get access to that. One thing to note though, that there can be a little bit sometimes of a wrinkle, is that you do also have to be caution if you make certain times updates to the UEFI BIOS, because the BIOS is generally programmed to be in alignment with the networking modules that we put on board. So take for instance, like if we have a motherboard that does have Wi-Fi and another one that doesn't, the BIOSes are different between the two. And in most situations, even if you replace the Wi-Fi module, that wouldn't stop you from doing the update. But the reason why it could be important is that if we release an update and there's an update that maybe has to do with maybe an update on a firmware level specifically to the network adapter, that might be something that have to be accounted for. But again, it's a smaller number of cases where that's a reality. In most situations, generally drivers are the only thing that got updated. It's very rare to see an actual firmware for a network controller, but it does happen. Okay. Jack says, great news, got my PG3 UCDM. Oh, fantastic. And you know, you getting it right now, you'll also be able to upgrade to the awesome new Dolby Vision update that we're getting ready to release. And I've been able to actually get a little bit of access to it. It's a very, very cool update. If you have some content that you can go ahead and dive into to be able to leverage and be able to check out Dolby Vision, man. But thanks for being Team Swift. It's a fantastic monitor. All right, so let's go ahead and go into our next update outside of BTF. All right. So we're going to go, got BTF there. And let me go ahead and just drop here in the chat really quick. I'm going to drop the links in there for anybody that does want to check out the current BTF ecosystem, as it is, like I said, currently available right now for both ROG and for TUF Gaming. All right, so go ahead and do that. So I'll drop those both in. All right, so we'll drop in here. Okay. There we go. Here's the Maximus Hero, and here's the TUF Gaming. And for those that are kind of just wondering if you want to check it out here, so if you go to the Buy Now section, right, you'll be able to see that there's essentially the bundled pairing configuration that's available, right? So you can see it's the chassis, the motherboard, and the graphics card are all paired together. Same thing for the ROG-based ecosystem. It would be all three kind of paired together, so all available. So I'll drop both those corresponding links in there if anybody wants to check those out. So let me go ahead and drop that in there. And you are also now seeing a little bit broader availability as well across some of our channel partners. Okay. John asking about the UCDP. Yeah, I'll talk about the UCDP. It's not yet launching. It's still a little bit away from the launch. We are probably going to be looking towards the launch next month sometime, so we're still a little bit away, but we are still going to be releasing the PG3 UTCP. So if you're interested in having that 4K 240 hertz and that full HD 1080p at 480 hertz experience, then definitely we will have you covered in the not too distant future. So make sure to keep it tuned there. All right, so let's go into some of the next items. So one update that I wanted to go on here is going to be for just some new AIO coolers that we're going to have. So these are going to be Prime AIO coolers. This is just a little bit of soft update. We're not going to go into the full details on them. I just want to be able to let you guys know that we are now going to be expanding to have new Prime AIO coolers available in the not too distant future. So many of you know that we already went ahead and essentially have expanded Prime Series. So Prime Series started originally with motherboards, then we released chassis. Not too long ago, we released power supplies, and so now we're also going to be adding in, and that we announced at Computex, essentially Prime Series graphics cards, and then we're also going to be Prime Series AIOs. So for the Prime Series AIOs, they will be pretty much our most entry-level offering in terms of a price point. I don't have finalized MSRP for you, but right now, for those of you who are kind of aware, we have the ROG RYUJIN and the Ryu series as kind of our top-end models. We also have our ProArt series, which there'll be an update that I'll talk about in a moment in terms of the ProArt lineup. Then we go into our TUF Gaming series, although, sorry, I forgot, ROG Stricks LC series. So it goes technically actually ROG, RYUJIN, and Ryu, right? We then have Strix LC series alongside kind of the ProArt series, then the TUF Gaming series, and then the Prime series. So Prime series will be the entry series offering that we'll have available. And there will be two models. You'll see here one, which will be a 360 with a screen, and then one without a screen. And so they will both pretty much look similar, just one will have an actual screen and one won't have a screen. These will essentially be pre-configured in terms of pre-wired through in terms of a grouped configuration. So you don't have to kind of have as much kind of cable management that you have to kind of deal with in the units. You know, again, just kind of a solid minimal offering in terms of the price point, but nice addition that we're going to be having right there. So that will be with our Prime Series AIOs. Okay. Let me go ahead and, as of right now, for anybody I'm reading, like in terms of size, right now, just the initial plan is for a 360. We might potentially maybe do 240, but as of right now, nothing bigger, so nothing like a 420 or 280 or even a 240. So right now, just pretty much the 360, and also currently only in black. So I don't know if we'll maybe have a white variant, but for right now, just the initial plan is only for a black variant. Okay. Staying in with AIOs, I also want to touch on another AIO which we're going to have, which is going to be the ProArt LC 360, which will be an update to our current ProArt. So we already, of course, had launched and released a ProArt model with the ProArt LC 420. So now we're going to have the LC 360. And one of the cool things that we did, of course, with the LC series was that we did go ahead and kind of partner with a manufacturer to be able to add in fans. To my knowledge, I think we're the only company that's done this with our AIOs. So with the, like, take for instance, like the RYUJIN models, you had the option to have our ARGB based fans or our standard black fans, or you also could get the Noctua based edition fans. Similarly with the ProArt LC 420, those came with Noctua IPPC based 140 millimeter base fans. This time around, we're actually going with the actual Apex based fans. So these actually use a very interesting design in terms of actually their material, in terms of metal. One of the kind of key benefits outside of their higher RPM range and their good static pressure performance and airflow performance is going to actually be their tonality. Kind of where we think about the positioning for something like a ProArt coolers, you're probably going to have a higher percentage of users that are generally loading the CPU a bit more because they're running kind of heavier workloads, maybe running extended rendering sessions. So that probably means that the cooler in itself is going to probably be running at a higher RPM level. Now, traditionally, when you tend to go to a higher RPM range, like you start to go over 1600, 1700, 1800 RPM, the tonality of the fan starts to become a little bit more apparent. That means that you can actually kind of hear it a little bit more easily, outside of just also being an increase in terms of the noise output. These fans tend to have a very, very pleasing kind of acoustic signature, so that even when they start to get into the higher RPM ranges, like 1800, 19, 2000 RPM, they actually tend to seem actually quieter and more pleasing in their tone than some other fans. So they offer, I think, a really great balance in terms of not only their durability and their, of course, their airflow and their static pressure, but also their tonality, which we think complements that. And you keep that really nice, clean, and minimal design that the ProArt series products are known for. So really much no RGB lighting on this product at all. There is a little bit of lighting that will be on the central pump head and blockhead here, and that's just a loading bar. The loading bar can be customized in the software suite, so if you wanted to have it be for like CPU loading, or if you wanted to have it be for something like temperature, or if you wanted to have it be like a notification response for other things, you can do that. But it's not like a screen. There's not a dynamic number of RGB lighting, because with ProArt, really, we always want to keep things very minimal, and generally there's no RGB lighting on any ProArt enabled product. So that gives you a little bit of visibility for the upcoming ProArt LC 360, which will be coming a little bit later on. Okay. Go ahead and quickly see here if any quick questions in there. Will there be other If you're referring to ASUTEC based AIOs, yes, we're going to be talking about that in a little bit as far as how actually we're continuing our partnership with ASUTEC. So as of right now, we still actually have more ASUTEC based AIO solutions than any other company. We think they're a great partner to work with, especially because of their proven reliability and performance and their overall production processes. So there's, I think, a lot of key benefits there. And of course, the new Strix LC3 series, which just recently launched. We launched first with the non-screen models, and the screen models are going to be coming in next month. Those are all utilizing the new ASUTEC V7 Gen 2 based pumps, which offer very, very good performance. If you actually really want to see some initial assessment on that, our friends over at Robitech actually recently did a build with the LC3, testing it out, and had really great thermal performance that they also showed off with the GT302 build, a whole TUF Gaming BTF based system that was utilizing that cooler. So you could definitely check that out. Okay. UDCP delayed because of a glossy makeover. No, we have no plans to release a glossy variant right now of the UCDP. We of course will be talking a little bit about the the XG27AQDMG, which is the world's first glossy, native glossy WOLED solution. And I think that we're going to continue to just monitor the feedback. You know, for quite some time, there's been people in the community that have been kind of clamoring and saying that they want a glossy solution. So I think now is really the opportunity for the community, especially with the 27-inch and at the price point that we've brought in this monitor being quite aggressive compared to even other 1440p OLED solutions that we've had, to really be able to see whether the community is really kind of active. In some situations, we see sometimes feedback be kind of very focused, but there's not really a lot of actually real world adoption based on kind of sometimes just variable feedback that you see spread throughout different communities. So I think based on kind of the precedence of really adoption that's here, this will give us an indicator at how much we can kind of continue to co-work with different panel partners at being able to develop you know, glossy variants of options, whether that's going to be something like a glossy variant for the UCDP. But as of right now, no, the launch version will continue to be just like what we've already announced before, which will be an AR BAT based display, which for the vast majority of users is actually what the expectation is and actually what the preference is. Glossy is still in the minority. It's not in the majority as far as what the community asks for. Okay. Yeah, so if you're looking for a WOLED plus KVM, that's again where we've done a really fantastic job. You know, we've really kind of led the industry at having our top-end ROG Swift monitors really kind of have all of those great features, right? So everything from things like, you know, the KVM and the USB-C functionality, where sometimes other vendors, they might have some of the key spec, but they might be omitting some of those other things. Like we really kind of have all of that kind of baked together. So if that's what you're looking for, I think you're going to be very, very happy with the UCDP once it gets released. Okay, so that's going to be the ProArt LC 360. All right, let's go ahead and go into our next update here. So give me a second. All right, for the Strix LC3 series, this guy, I have already talked about this a little bit. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I think we probably will have a focused live stream where I'll do a little bit of a performance test with it if you guys are interested. But this is just going to be the LCD based variant. So this is actually one of the ones that is utilizing the latest generation ASUTEC based pump designs, right, and cold plate designs. So this is updated ASUTEC V7 Gen 2. Keep in mind that the RYU3 and the RYUJIN 3, both of those models are using the ASUTEC Gen 8 based design. So both of them are using the latest generation, very good performance, whether you're talking about Intel or AMD based platforms. Cool things here, right, is that, you know, from an upgraded perspective, the new pump performance has optimization in terms of not only noise and also performance. Generally, it's a couple C, depending at kind of every 100 watts that you need to kind of dissipate relative to the performance. That's also somewhat defined by different parameters that you might define within your UEFI, and also how you're loading the actual the system and the CPU, right? Because different games have different kind of characteristics, and also games are quite different than synthetics. Sometimes when people measure kind of temperatures, they might use a synthetic, but a synthetic application really isn't a good barometer to see what your temperatures are going to be in a game. As we've shown in some prior live streams, right, if you were to take an actual game and test the thermals and you compare that to, let's say, a synthetic, you can sometimes notice that the delta can easily be, you know, upwards of, you know, 30 degrees. So while the data is empirically accurate, right, that you're essentially able to see this performance outcome, it's not really representative of what you would really get. So I think it's always important to look at your thermals, your clock speeds in relation to actually what you're doing on the system, as opposed to quote unquote a supposed synthetic or kind of worst case scenario. Because even the worst case scenario many times it's not realistically a realistic worst case scenario, because you would only really have that worst case scenario in a situation where maybe there was an actual like failure or something wasn't working effectively, because there's no game that would mirror that same type of application. Excuse me, there's no game that would mirror that same type of thermal load, right? So just kind of something to be mindful of. This will come in both white and in black. We will have both units, like I said, in LCD or non-LCD, and both units have the decoupled actually pump head, so you can actually remove the whole pump head, which is pretty cool. So if you want to make that a little bit easier for kind of cable routing, you can do that as well. So these guys will be coming out in the not too distant future. I will go ahead and drop a link right now in the chat for those of you that are interested in kind of seeing that. And I can also, let me go ahead and confirm the MSRP pricing, because I do have the MSRP pricing for that one. So give me 1 second here. All right, so I've gone ahead and dropped that in the chat there for you that are interested in checking out the Strix LC3, okay, LCD. So again, remember, one has a screen and one does not have a screen, okay? And let me confirm here on the MSRP pricing. Let's take a look here. Sorry, I just need to download the updated pricing information here. I'll let you guys know here in a moment what actually our pricing expectation is. Okay, here we go. LC3, where do I have you? LC3, here we go. And here we go. Okay, so the 240 is going to be $170, guys. Let me go ahead and see if I can just kind of put this out here. So we're going to put the 240 is going to be 170, and that's for ARGB, okay? And that's the same for both the white and the black. And then the 360 will be 230, okay? All right, so that's just a quick recap for you on the pricing. So the 240, 170, and then the 360 is going to be 230. Again, available in both white and black. All right. All right. Let me see. Still waiting for new screens other than IPS, which is better, if not perfect text, more DPI. Not sure what you mean by more perfect text, because in reality, if you talk about already text standards, text already kind of on an IPS is pretty much already kind of the gold standard. I would say in many situations it's actually generally better than even OLED-based solutions. DPI or PPI, actually, which is probably the better way to phrase it, is important in terms of some elements of text rendering. So resolution directly kind of ties in with that. So generally, if you really kind of want the best, as I've talked about in the past, you know, if you talk about kind of the absolute best sharpness and kind of an image, 27-inch 4K display is preferred. Some people don't like that because they think that it's too small, but if you really kind of are somebody that wants the absolute kind of sharpest and the best clarity when it comes to, I think, text, 27 4K is going to be the preferred. But a lot of people, when they want 4K, they tend to gravitate towards 32. But of course, that means that you're going to have a worse PPI. The PPI was still quite good. I mean, 4K at 32, I think is still very, very nice. But you know, you can still get a sharper experience. And technically, I can tell you from when I've seen our ProArt series monitor, where we have actually a 4K 24-inch, that's even more impressive when you actually talk about the PPI of 4K at 24 inches. So yeah, it's not just the totality of quote unquote the panel being a factor there, right? The panel is definitely going to be an underlying kind of a contributor to the text rendering performance, because of course the subpixel rendering is going to be important. But there are also other things. Take for instance like reflection handling is going to be important to text as well. We're actually going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about the new ProArt series monitors, where they actually have a technology that we call Lux Pixel, which actually there's a secondary actually layer that we put on top of the AR, which actually helps to reduce what's called screen sparkle. And screen sparkle, especially when you get to a tighter PPI, can sometimes cause some of the text to kind of seem sharp or kind of shimmery, and it will actually help to mitigate that and offer actually better clarity and overall just a better image viewing experience that's more comfortable. And so in that regard, these are going to be very, very good. But of course the PPI is even going to be higher on those displays, because we're talking about a 5K, 6K, and then of course even on our flagship monitor there'll be an 8K based offering. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and move into our next item here. So those were our AIO cooler updates. So we had the Prime series, we had the ProArt series, and we had the Strix LC3 series. For those of you who haven't seen it, we are getting ready to push out. It happened actually pretty much kind of while I was out. I do want to just kind of give a soft update that the RYUJIN WB has gone ahead and actually become readily available. So for those of you who have been interested in actually picking up the RYUJIN water block, it is now available. So we do have a white and a black base variant. So these guys do have an embedded VRM fan, high actually fin density that is going to be on the unit, cold plate, which was done in coordination with Asetek based design. It does actually come with a matching set of fittings that are going to be on this unit as well. So if you have been looking to kind of set up a nice high quality custom liquid loop setup, then you can definitely check out the RYUJIN water block. I think it's a really cool, interesting option, kind of somewhat unique within the industry and the marketplace, as most of the traditional water blocks that are available, of course, don't have native screens built onto them. So this is something that we're cool. It's now finally available. We'll definitely have more to come. Maybe we'll do something, I don't know, maybe with the build, or maybe do something around this in the not too distant future. So stay tuned if you guys are interested, or maybe seeing something in the community side on this side. But I will go ahead and drop this link in the chat for those that might be interested. Okay, let me go ahead and see here. JC gives some feedback. He says, on my 32 UCDM with SDR, text looks just as good as on my PG32 UQX. Yeah, I would agree. You know, the updated kind of performance that you have when it comes to, I think, text rendering on OLED with the latest generation panels is quite good. I still actually think that the UQX is a little bit better overall in kind of all situations when we talk about, I think, the text rendering, but I would agree they're pretty close. You know, it's you know, it's hairs apart, right? And for sure, the only thing that would really beat that in terms of overall kind of sharpness or definition would be going then to a more compact display, so something like a 27 4K. But both of those are going to be very good. To me, I would consider, of course, that LCD already kind of at the A level, and finally, I think with the OLEDs, the latest generations, especially with the 4K based variants, you're now getting into that A level class of text rendering performance. So thanks for that feedback, JC. All right, let's go ahead and go into the next item here. All right, so let's go into some, what are we going to go into? Let's go maybe PSUs. Let's quickly do some PSUs. I think we'll do that. Okay, so this is just going to be a quick one, guys. We're not going to spend too much time on it. So we're going to do the Thor 3. So let's go ahead and take a look here, guys. So we are going to have essentially some updates. As most of you guys know, we already kind of finished refreshing pretty much our current product stack of power supplies not that long ago, right? So as of right now, with our current product stack, we have, of course, the Thor 2 series, we have the ROG Strix Aura Gold series. Pretty much everything is ATX 3.0 except for the current Thor models, although of course they come already included with cables that allow them to correspondingly work with 12 volt high power, or of course 12x6 type connectors, so you're already kind of good to go in that regard. But all of the other PSUs have already been natively updated, right, for that ATX 3.0 specification. So that would be the TUF Gaming Gold series, the ROG Strix Aura Gold series, the Loki series, and the Prime series. But we have actually two cool new exciting updates. One is the long kind of in-design development that we've had for our new Thor 3 series. So with the Thor 3 series, these are going to be leveraging GaN-based technology. If you're not too familiar with GaN, it's really just the next kind of type of component technology that which really helps to increase overall efficiency, reduce actually internal temperatures. This also helps to align with the performance of the PSU, but also helps us to really offer the best-in-class performance from an acoustic perspective, which ROG PSUs already kind of set that benchmark for quite some time, partly because of the mass of the heat sinks that we utilize. The heat sinks in our PSUs are about twice as large as what you generally see within the industry. So very, very good, and we're going to continue that forward. So both of these will be leveraging the GaN-based technology, and then of course a lot of the hallmarks that you already know for RGB PSUs. The big thing for the Thor series for this generation will be is that there's a pogo pin magnetic design for the actual display. So you essentially can go ahead and now flip the power supply, and you can move the display from one side to the other. So depending on whatever the orientation might be, where in the past, if you were to flip the Thor, you would have lost the ability to be able to have the OLED wattage display visible. You can now still maintain that display being visible. So that is an improvement that we're going to have there. On the Strix side, also another thing you'll notice right here is going to be this little kind of purple or pink or kind of maybe fuchsia type connector. And so this is a new patent pending GPU voltage stabilizer technology which we've integrated. So this will be kind of like one of the hallmark characteristics that we're going to be implementing specifically as a benefit for ROG PSUs. So you won't see this on our other PSUs, such as let's say like the TUF Gaming or the Prime series models. But for the users that are looking for the absolute best performance, here we're essentially be able to maximize the GPU's actually output relative to kind of transient response. So when your graphics card is essentially being loaded, right, when it's going from kind of a lower performing 2D state to a 3D state, there's essentially a ramp up, right? There's a period where it's going from a lower operating clock to a higher performing clock speed, and there can be of course a big ramp up in terms of the power consumption. And with this type of design, we essentially have a much quicker ability to be able to actually ramp up and be able to provide the graphics card power. Now ultimately our prior power supplies already gave you great stability, great performance, but what we actually have been able to measure is we have actually been able to see an improvement to performance. Now it's going to be subtle, it's not a huge degree, we're talking about percents. Right now I would probably say somewhere between maybe 2-3+% in terms of the relative kind of performance increase, but it is something that will be measurable in terms of that performance characteristic. So if you're making that investment into the highest performing GPU and you want to kind of get that absolute best performance, you know, you might have already been considering going with an ROG class PSU. So here our kind of goal is to again kind of comprehensively look at all the things from the aesthetics to of course the output performance to the acoustics, you know, to even the fit and finish, as well as even things like the included cables. All those different things are items that we're evaluating when we talk about our ROG PSUs, and so we're going to be happy to be able to expand upon these. So the Thor series will also see a bit of a change for this generation where we'll be revising the wattage. So the Thor wattage range will we'll shift away from offering an 850 watt. We won't offer an 850 anymore for Thor 3, and we'll pretty much just go from 1000 watt up to 1600 watt. Okay, and then for the ROG Strix series, we'll still maintain kind of that entry enthusiast option and kind of move up from there. So pretty much the same as it is for the ROG Strix Aura Gold. So that should be maybe even a 750. I don't know 100% if we'll bring in the 750 in the North America market, but for sure at least an 850, and then all the way up to a 1200 watt model. So at least 850 to 1200 watt, if not 750 to 1200 watt, and then again for the ROG Thor series, 1000 to 1600 watt. Okay. So that is going to be the two details right there, and again here you can see just a little bit of this, and there'll be more details to come in the not too distant future when we talk about the ROG Thor series, right, where they're going to be bringing again a big focus in terms of the performance, the aesthetics, the usability. Again here you can see that cool magnetic based pogo pin design, which I think is pretty slick. Even the pogo pins is pretty cool. You can see actually that they spell it ROG, so I think that's pretty slick. And if The other side, when you actually aren't utilizing the display, essentially the OLED display, there is kind of like a small, like little kind of silicone insert that goes above, excuse me, on top of the pogo pins to protect them. So even if you don't actually utilize it, it's not as if the pogo pins are directly exposed. Okay, in case anybody's wondering. Let me see if there's any quick questions that might have come up on that side. Let me see here. Hey Daniel, we don't talk about anything that might be still under NDA, essentially, or that hasn't officially kind of launched or released. So keep in mind, when it comes to our PCDIY stream, we focus on things that have officially been announced or soft detailed, or might even have an official teaser. But if there's anything that's technically under an embargo, we don't discuss that. We don't confirm whether it's under design or development. So as always, if you're interested in anything that you think might be coming down the future, the best I can tell you is just be part of our PCDIY group or watch the weekly streams, and you'll get the latest and greatest information as soon as we can provide it to you. Okay. So Suman says the PSU is awesome. I cannot wait for the release. That sounds pretty cool right there. JC says, I need a Thor trade-up program. I have so many Thors. Thanks for that feedback. I guess that's maybe something I can talk to our team about. Maybe we can see if that's something that could be facilitated as far as doing something like that. Raffin goes, could you do a comparison between all Wi-Fi 7 routers later? That would probably take a little bit of time, but I think that's a great piece that we could do probably in a dedicated stream in the not too distant future. So yeah, I would say stay tuned for that. I mean, I have covered, I think, the majority of the models in a prior live stream, maybe. I don't remember if it was in May or April, but for sure when we talked about the BE98 Pro and then the BE96, we gave a comparison to that. So those really kind of the two primaries, right? We have the BE96, which is not technically an RG model. Then we, of course, have the BE98, and then we now have upcoming the BE19. But I will talk about the BE1900 because that's a new model, and I will talk about how it compares against the BE98. So if you're wondering kind of a differential between the two, definitely make sure to just watch, and hopefully that'll answer your questions. Or if you have something more specific, just let me know, and hopefully I can clarify that for you, okay? So that is going to be the new PSU side. So cool updates on that side, okay? All right, let's see what else we got there, because we still got more. So let me go ahead and go here. We got the new AIOs. Okay, yeah, I think keeping in line with power, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the Mjolnir. So I know everybody remembers probably the Mjolnir when we talked about it for kind of the when we talked about it during the April Fool's announcement, and then we confirmed that it was not an April Fool's announcement, right? So let me go ahead and show you guys here. So this is still not 100% ready for release, but I wanted to go ahead and show you guys kind of the updated kind of image and kind of what we have in place right here. So we're very excited again to be kind of designing and developing right now our first UPS and kind of power station. So it's first and foremost important to understand that this is first intended as a UPS. So as a protective based system, to be able to have your default system be able to be powered in the event you feel like a surge, a spike, a sag, or a brownout or something like that. You're helping to protect, of course, all your components, and then you're still able to be able to maintain uptime. You know, within the projected kind of power and uptime for like a 4080 class desktop enthusiast system, we're projecting about an hour worth in terms of the overall runtime capability. Of course, it does depending on your system configuration and different parameters that you have defined, but approximately we're going to say for a 4080 class is about an hour. You can of course see that you've got your AC output with 4 course connectors right there. You're also going to have high-speed charging support with Type A ports there at 18 watts, and then you're also going to have 2 USB-C 100-watt based connectors as well. The top of this unit is also going to support Qi wireless charging. That's going to be Qi 2, which is the latest generation specification, so it's actually twice the charging speed performance. The original specification was a lower wattage. The newer specification supports a higher wattage, so if you've got some of the newer phones that are on the market that support that specification, you'll even see faster charging performance when you just place them directly on top of that. And of course, one of the really cool elements is that this handle right here is actually detachable. It's magnetic. Once you remove it on there, it is actually a flashlight, so it will actually be able to illuminate your environment around you, so that if maybe your power went down, you don't have to kind of reach for your phone and click click on the flashlight or something like that, you could literally just take that, click the button, and now you would have a flashlight that you could utilize while you're powering your other devices right there. So this is going to be the Mjolnir that you can see. Most of the ID design is fairly, I'd say, complete at this time. We are still kind of maybe evaluating, kind of tweaking a couple of things, but this does give you a little bit of a perspective of what we're going to be looking at. And you know, different kind of use case scenarios. Of course, for I think the majority of users, it's going to be, like I said, a stationary UPS that they're going to have probably at their desk, their setup environment, with their primary, the device is connected, and kind of them being safeguarded and protected. I will also note that there are some cool things that we've gone ahead and optimized. That the switchover time we've tested in accordance with our high performance type of components, which helps to ensure that we're really making sure that we give you an optimal kind of transition experience. The actual batteries are using some of the most advanced batteries on the market, which have a significantly higher lifespan than a lot of the older type of batteries, which have a much older type of battery chemistry, which means actually a few things. One, they have a lower number of actually charge cycles that they support. They also have a lower level of efficiency. So there's a lot of upsides into the actual battery management system that we have in place, as well as actually the life scale that we have and for the batteries that we're going to be utilizing as well. So really cool, I think, addition that we're going to have in the lineup, but we're not going to go into all the details because we're not ready to kind of give every single detail, but we'll definitely have way more to come for this when we get ready to launch it. As of right now, we don't have a defined launch date, but again, if you have feedback or thoughts on this guy, let us know. It's something that I think a lot of people, when we pulled previously in the community, whether they wanted to see an ROG UPS, a lot of people were really excited about it, and we're very excited to be able to introduce this. I now think the next big thing is people are asking, they want to see maybe some ROG power strips, kind of maybe something that's stylistically but also high performance, a high quality option, maybe not something as extensive as like a UPS. That's also something else that we're also kind of evaluating and looking at for the future. Okay. Let me go ahead right there. No, there's no OEM. This is a self-designed product that we're designing and developing in-house right here. Let me go ahead and see right here. I would love to see a rack mount ROG UPS. Interesting. Okay, thanks for that feedback. That's good feedback. Thank you right there. Can we use the Mjolnir UPS for self-defense and emergency? No, we do not advocate that you utilize this for self-defense. I mean, I suppose if you could go ahead and lift this up, you could maybe attempt to hurl at somebody, but you definitely would not want to lift that up because, again, remember, that is a magnetic. And that's it's important to note, if I didn't show it there in the image, that the back actually has a handle. So when you actually go to lift the unit, that's really how you want to lift the unit. You would not want to lift it, of course, by the flashlight, because the flashlight, of course, detaches, right? Will you guys have, of course, AM5 next generation based motherboards? As of right now, we're not confirming what we're going to be doing for BTF based motherboard designs. So this is still something that's under design review and design discussion. So all I can tell you is you're just going to have to wait until platform launch for more information regarding what we're going to be doing for BTF. But rest assured, we're committed to maintaining essentially the BTF based ecosystem. There's some exciting things that we're going to be doing for next generation designs that while I can't give you the details on, I can tell you that we're very committed again to continuing on and supporting this ecosystem, as we've seen a lot of people that are very excited about it, especially that are users that are specifically from the AMD community who have asked for that they want to see actually AMD BTF based solutions. So we are definitely aware of that. Any chance that the Mjolnir can change CPU, GPU power profile when it goes onto battery power? Interesting. Yeah, in theory, maybe. That might be, maybe if you can provide some additional feedback, feel free to go ahead and maybe send an email, pcdiy@asus.com, or post in our community group to kind of maybe give a little bit more context. I'm kind of wondering what you're wondering about there, because keep in mind that for both CPUs and GPUs, that their power states are defined generally by their load states, right? So generally when you're running at a more conservative state, so like you're in an idle state, take for instance, unless you're forcing a certain clock state, the card is already kind of going down to a lower operating level, right, to maximize power. But I do think it would be interesting, I think to your point, like I said, essentially if it was running off the unit, could there be some intelligence that kind of helps to maybe set maybe a more kind of eco profile to kind of maximize the lifespan, right? To where it says, hey, maybe go in and automatically engage like 65 watt mode. Because take for instance, like an Armory Crate, we do have kind of power profile tuning parameters. So maybe there's an example that, hey, AC detects that, it's now running off this unit, and maybe it says, hey, we want to force your CPU to maybe run at like 65 watt mode, right, or something like this, so that you could extend the lifespan. That is, I think, something interesting. To my knowledge right now, that is not something that we've implemented, but I do see how that could actually add some additional value, and it's definitely something that we could discuss with our team. JC says, I think for Gen 2, the power plugs can be on a different side than the screen. If I have this on my desk, I would want the outlets facing away from me. Yeah, we actually did discuss that, and I do agree with you. I talked with actually our team that I actually even wanted to have like protective covers, just one, just kind of in general, because I thought that would offer even a little bit of a cleaner look. And then ideally would have liked to have like 2 connectors on the back at least, so that you could kind of have that, because most people, I think the primary thing would be kind of like their monitor and then potentially their other system. So that is still something that we're evaluating, and I think we're probably a little bit too late in the stage to probably change that, but I know it is something that we've discussed, and I can understand that, again, if you did have that situated, that you don't want those kind of cables coming outwards, right? You'd rather be able to kind of have them on the inverse, right? So totally understand where you're coming from. That's a very good point of feedback. Thank you, Justin. Okay, let's go ahead and see right here. Michael Braun goes, AC6 yet? No, I can't tell you though. The plan right now for, we just released an update right now for Armory Crate, which is actually going live, but I believe our actually milestone release for Armory Crate 6 right now is tentatively set for, I think, early Q4. So I think September timeframe is when you guys will see a major milestone, actually big, very, very big change. There's a lot of big changes from UI and other usability elements that will be overhauled quite significantly within Armory Crate 6. So we're still a bit away from that, so that'll be coming in the not too distant future. All right, so let's go to one of the other updates that we got right here. So we talked about the ROG UPS. Again, if anybody has any other feedback, feel free to go ahead and drop that right there. But we're going to go here now into the ROG Z22. So I think this one is pretty interesting. This is actually something that, again, coming out kind of the BTF ecosystem. For those of you who might be familiar, we of course had the ROG Z11, which was our first mini ITX chassis, and it was a very cool chassis that allowed you, of course, have it oriented from a vertical perspective or horizontal perspective, right? So for this generation, kind of, we wanted to be able to kind of leverage with some of the cool things that we've done within the BTS-based graphics card, allowing it to be kind of something that could easily be installed, but also has like a focal kind of visible element to it in terms of the system. Kind of have it be kind of an open system, but not necessarily open, because compared to like an open chassis where you can see everything and you can also be exposed to a lot more wires, here this still has a much more kind of clean, stylized appearance, right, where you don't see a lot of those things. You're just helping to provide a more pronounced visibility to maybe something like the graphics card. Now, it's important to note that right now for the Z22 concept, this is as planned as a chassis, not as a system. So while you might see, of course, it really be complementary with something like BTF graphics card, our plan is to allow for full standard interoperability, of course, in alignment with other graphics cards. So if you're using a competitor's graphics card, it could still work there. Now, there are some kind of dimensional elements where our card kind of really kind of fits perfectly in terms of the depth, right, and how this aligns with this, but we are looking at maybe some kind of end covers, maybe something that would allow for kind of an additional layer that could be mounted in there if you had a shorter stack card in there. So maybe that could be something like a touch interface display, clips on there, and it's kind of like an end point that's there. There are some elements that we're evaluating in terms of also lighting design that's also on here. Form factor consideration, if you're wondering, this would be mini ITX. Then I believe it's an SFXL based PSU that would be supported in here. So something like our Loki, and then something like a, you know, a Dash I mini ITX based motherboard. You can of course see Type-C connectivity, Type A, power button, and then audio. I would love to know your guys' feedback. Are you happy with that configuration, or would you maybe rather take out the audio? We see more and more people moving over to digital connections, whether they're wireless, so maybe having something like the Delta, which is native already USB-C, or they're using wireless, which also comes with its own wireless adapter. So unless you're purposely using analog, a lot of people that are also still maybe using analog, maybe they're going to use like an external DAC and amp, right, which would then also connect via USB. So would you rather have maybe more high-speed USB ports than necessarily those analog outputs, or would you unquestionably want to make sure to keep those analog outputs? What is your guys' thoughts on there? And the last thing I'll note here for the Z22 is it is designed to be used in 3 different configurations. So it does have kind of this angled default design. This is kind of like an air ramp, which helps to bring air into the system, but you could also remove that and lay it kind of entirely flat, and you can also tilt it vertically up so it would have like more of a tower type of design concept. So this is going to be something also that we're evaluating right now. We don't have a hard kind of availability date for it, but we wanted to start kind of collecting feedback and see if people are excited by the concept of something like this type of chassis being offered within our lineup. So this is the Z22. Let me see right here if anybody has any kind of thoughts right there. Paskowitz notes is I'd rather have more USB ports. Okay, well, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that. Joseph says, why no ROG Elite Reward points on my GT98 router? I couldn't comment on that, but if you have any questions regarding anything on Elite Rewards, you can actually check out the Elite Rewards website, and there's actually an email address that you can send over to our team, which can help you to give you any insight in terms of any questions, whether it's products that are listed, whether they're going to add them later, or anything else that you have any questions on when it comes to the Elite Rewards program. Okay, appreciate that as well. Justin goes, as I cannot wait for the Z22. It's like having a cannon on your desk. I think it's pretty interesting. Yes. Okay. Hey, Wired Hardware Man, fantastic. Thanks for the feedback. I appreciate that right there. So Eternal Lazi goes, needs both. Headset makers can't keep their minds up on interfaces. Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, right? I think there's a benefit to having both, right? Unquestionably. But, you know, I/O, I think, is always one of those things that some people want. And then I think it's also, there's a debate, right? Sometimes some people don't even use the I/O that's on the front of a chassis because they don't like certain things hanging off. I think with something smaller like this, so you might probably be more inclined to probably use it because it's probably going to be more immediate than to you than maybe like a larger system, which might be further away from you, right? So I do think having kind of maybe the preferred type of connectors up in the front could be ideal. We're also still playing around with some other kind of cool ideas that we might have for the Z22 that I don't want to talk about that I think could be kind of interesting when it comes to that. But definitely, if you guys have thoughts, let us know. Would you like to ultimately, like I said, see essentially more essentially connectivity when it comes to USB, or would you like to also maintain that analog audio-based connectivity on there? Okay. Is there fan compatibility? Yes, because of course you can fit, of course, a high performance cooling solution. That's actually what you have here, up to a 360 millimeter AIO. So in terms of that, that's up to you in terms of being able to define that. Just 3 independent channels. I mean, you can see pretty much here for the GPU, you don't really have to worry about it because it's open in that respect, right? And then you're going to have the, of course, the radiators right here and the airflow that's going to be available to you on the other side, which is going to be compartmentalized there. And then that's going to run in, of course, with your pump and your cables that are going to go to cooling the CPU, right? So it's up to you. If you want to change the fans that came with that, then you could change that. We're also considering, hey, do we have like maybe like a swappable cover or shroud that allows you to see visibility of maybe something like ARGB fans, or do you want it to just kind of be more stealthy and kind of more minimal, where you have like an aluminum cover with just maybe, you know, with venting right there with a high level of porosity to maximize airflow, right? So there's different ways to approach it that we're still kind of in discussion and trying to strategize and collect feedback on to see what might be the right design to section. You can always get a 3.5 millimeter to USB-C DAC. The Apple one is very good. Yeah, I mean, we also have our own. We actually have the ROG Clavis, which is a similar. It actually is a USB-C to 3.5 millimeter, and actually has an ESS Saber DAC and amp integrated within that. So it's a very high-performing solution. But again, that's always kind of like, you know, now you have to use an adapter to do that, right? So is that something that somebody wants to do as opposed to just having the native-based connection, right? So there's different ways to go through that. But that is a good point, Paskowitz. Thank you. And hopefully Speed Racer, I answered the question that you had right there. So let's go ahead and continue on there. Give you guys, I guess, a little bit of a subtle next generation AMD board design here. So we'll just do that. I'm just going to show it to you here. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't have much details to tell you, but here's just a little bit of a teaser for the next generation AMD based motherboard here under the TUF Gaming lineup. So we showed this one off at Computex. We didn't show anything else off, so don't ask me about anything else. Rest assured, as always, we will definitely get into the nitty gritty and talk about all the really cool stuff that we're going to be doing for next generation motherboards. But here's just a little bit of one of the next generation motherboards that we're kind of showing off. So there you guys can see a little bit of the ID design there. It's not even 100% complete, just a little bit of a teaser for you guys to check out. Okay. All right. All right, so let's continue on I said we got a lot here. I think Prime Series graphics cards. Let's do that. All right, so let's go here. Okay, so for many of you, if you're not aware, when it comes to our graphics card lineup, we essentially have right now ROG Strix, which is pretty much our flagship series cards. Those are going to be our most performant cards, the highest build quality, right? They're going to have the best thermals, they're going to have outstanding acoustics, really premium quality construction, the best water block support. Although for this generation, the water block support between TUF Gaming and ROG Strix is the same, as they use the same base PCB. But that segues out, right? So we have ROG Strix. We have TUF Gaming. ProArt series is kind of analogous to TUF Gaming. They're about in kind of the same class, although technically ProArt is a little bit more expensive. And then you also have kind of an offshoot of that also exists in there, which is Noctua. But Noctua, it doesn't exist for a wide range of GPUs. We only have it for 2 GPUs. But you have, again, ROG Strix, TUF Gaming, ProArt, Noctua. We then move down to our dual series, which our dual series go all the way up into kind of the mid-range of something like a 4070 kind of class GPU. Those are going to be 2.5 slot. And like the ProArt cards, those cards were already great options for SSF builders. So people that were doing small form factor builds, medium form factor builds, the dual series and the ProArt series are really kind of industry leading, right? They're already very compact. They were 2.5 slots, so they worked really well for a vast majority of builders. Some of you might have seen there's an NVIDIA guideline that got issued for their SSF guideline, and you know, ASUS being a leading, of course, partner with NVIDIA was looking to support their initiative, while we were also looking to develop a new, more cost competitive while still maintaining a good quality design offering in terms of our graphics card lineup, closer to the default MSRP pricing that you see within GPUs, as generally our TUF Gaming graphics cards and our Strix graphics, RG Strix graphics cards are at a higher price band. So we now are going to see the introduction of our new Prime Series based graphics cards. So Prime Series will sit essentially in the same kind of position as we have with the Dual Series, with the main difference being that Prime Series will be a 3-fan based solution, as opposed to the Dual Series will be a 2-fan based solution. So let's go ahead and kind of maybe put Prime next to kind of ProArt. And while I can't talk about anything in terms of next generation based product, I can tell you that we will be looking to maintain the Prime series as a series as we continue to move forward in terms of next generation card design and development. So we will be looking to maintain the series. So as you kind of become familiar with its current position in our 40 series refresh lineup, you can continue to expect to kind of see now Prime being an offering that we have available. So kind of broke that down to you from Prime series, the Dual series, the ProArt series, the TUF Gaming, the Noctua, and then ROG Strix. You're going to have that. And so we'll have some other announcements at a later date as well. But let's go ahead and take a look right here. So here you can see a good example of the Prime card. The Prime cards right now already went from a 4060 all the way up to like a 4080 Super. These cards were already a maximum of a 2.5 slot based design. And then in terms of their length, it was going to be up to 300 millimeters. So they were already very compact, worked really, really well for a vast number of builders. If you're wondering, one of the reasons why we set a max slot spacing at 2.5 slots for these cards was that for motherboards that had dual slot spacing for professional creators that wanted to be able to have GPU acceleration with applications like DaVinci Resolve or 3D Studio Max, Blender, things like that, where you can run multiple GPUs where you can't use multiple GPUs in gaming, you would need to have 2.5 slots, because our larger cards like our TUF Gaming or ROG Strix, because they were essentially more than 2.5 slots, they would eat that secondary slot that's on that motherboard, not allowing you to run 2 GPUs. So there was a hard reason why we set the ProArt graphics cards at setting a 2.5 slot max design. So with the Prime series, we're going to still maintain that focus here, is that this will be a 2.5 slot based solution. Here you're also going to have a 2.5 slot based solution, but it is actually going to be a bit more of a compact card. Here for the ProArt series, you're going to be going up to that 300 millimeters, and here you're going to be going up to currently a maximum within the current lineup for Prime series will be, again, a 4070 Super, and that will be going up to 269. So it's a bit shorter as opposed to the ProArt, where the ProArt is just a little bit longer, right? So it's about 30 millimeters in terms of the difference, right? 300 versus about the 270 approximately. So that's going to be a difference. The slot spacing is going to be the same. Thermal performance on the ProArt will be better. So it does utilize a more advanced thermal assembly. It also does have more premium design elements, whether it's going to be in the actual materials for the construction, such as the shroud and the backplate, and the VRM components with higher performing capacitors and things along those lines. Here you can expect a solid, stable, and reliable solution built to our high quality Auto Extreme production standard process. Good thermals and good acoustics, but definitely if you're prioritizing one to have the best thermals and the best acoustics, then ProArt will definitely be better for that compact design. And of course, if you're not restricted by size, then TUF Gaming and ROG Strix will. But of course, all those cards will also cost you more. So Prime Series is really going to be targeted for those that want to kind of maximize their budget and don't want to spend anything really over kind of generally usually pretty close to the MSRP pricing for the card. The shroud and the backplate for the Prime Series will be plastic. They will not be metal. So just for reference, although they do have a little bit of kind of like a finishing that gives it kind of a simulated kind of metal design aesthetic. So if you're kind of wondering on that side, that's where you'll see that a little bit there. Let me go ahead and just bring up here just kind of two angled perspectives of the Prime Series here. And here you can kind of see them just a little bit. And there you go. So you can see then kind of side by side right there. And you're still going to get things like the, of course, Auto Extreme production process, the axial tech-based fans, right? Still, like I said, cool, compact, quiet-based designs. You can check out a couple of different pieces outlined online where some of these cards were covered by a couple of different media that came by and checked out the Computex booth. And we'll probably have some additional coverage that we'll be doing across targeted reviews and seating, so that if you guys want to actually see these in some certain builds, you'll be able to check them out. So what do you guys think? Are you excited about the addition of a Prime Series based graphics card as far as kind of rounding out our product portfolio as it is right now? Or overall, do you think it is adding maybe unneeded complexity? And what's your thought between like a 2-fan to a 3-fan? There are some users that sometimes just have a visual perspective that they feel that a card that has 3 fans is better than a card that has dual fans. You know, our dual solution right now is quite popular, and I love the fact that they're even more compact and allow for outstanding kind of interoperability and compatibility with good thermals and good acoustics. But there are sometimes some people that gravitate towards kind of seeing a 3-fan solution, and here we can still keep a compact 3-fan based design. So again, Prime Series will be coming probably sometime in late July timeframe in terms of their availability. Is there a plan to offer the Prime Series cards in a slim variant? So Speed Racer, not sure what you mean by slim variant, because this is already slim. So if we talk about traditional most graphics cards, you're generally going to be talking about most cards now are usually 2.75 to upwards of 3.5 slots or even greater than that, right? So a very large number of cards, you know, are 2.7, 2.8, 3, 3.2 plus slots, right? So again, these are already all slim in terms of that 2.5 slot, as they're also adhering to NVIDIA's SSF guidelines. And that also does align even with the actual placement and kind of the recessed connector, Z height for the actual 12x6 power connector, which is on the card as well. So I would already classify these as a very slim card, but they were already slim by standards. If we took a look at something like the ProArt series, we're already very slim compared to a lot of the other cards, and why you saw the usage very, very prevalent amongst like SFF builders that were using very small chassis and wanted to be able to do that. Yeah. So hopefully that answers that question right there. I love the look of the white TUF Gaming GPU. Too bad you don't make a 4080 Super nor a 7900 XTX. We did actually make a limited edition TUF Gaming 7900 XT, but not an XTX. You know, that was a little bit of kind of like testing the waters. Historically, we haven't made white motherboards or white graphics cards for the TUF Gaming lineup. With the exception for the BTF lineup, we decided to have something kind of be something distinguishing in that kind of that launch, and that's the reason why we decided to do the motherboard in white and also the graphics card in white. So right now there's not immediate plans to maintain that type of perspective, but we are looking to maintain hopefully some diversity potentially within Prime series of having like black and white. We already do that within the dual series. So take for instance like the dual models, you could get like a 4060 or 4070 dual in white or in black. And same thing with like ROG Strix, we offer them in white and black in the higher end side. And so for Prime series, we are attempting to kind of try to balance out, seeing if we can also maybe offer a similar level of flexibility. But it does get challenging just having the sheer number of permutations and SKUs, even when you're just literally talking about having it be an alternate option. Just when it comes to like, it's exactly the same design, just in a different color. Slim as a blower fan, that's entirely different thing, because even if it was with a blower fan, it wouldn't necessarily be that much slimmer. Technically, usually blower fan based designs, right, are even going to be a little bit more compact. So they go from like 2.5 to some blower designs would be like a 2-slot based design. We have had models like that. So we actually do currently actually produce, let me see if I can take for instance here. We do have cards like our Turbo series. We don't generally offer these in terms of the normal consumer. So an example right here is going to be like the 4070, and actually we have a 4080 version as well, where we have the Turbo. And so these cards you can see right here are going to be using a blower based design. Now these are really kind of most sensibly really only designed for a couple of key scenarios. One, very specialized like high performance workstations, right, where they're going to stack multiple GPUs on something like a special like high-end enthusiast desktop based motherboard. So something like you know, our TRX series chipset from AMD, or WRX platforms, things like that, where you have, you know, 4, 5, 6 PCIe slots or something like that, right? That's going to be one situation. Or sometimes rack-based GPU servers also would use something along these lines, where really they're not worrying about kind of noise, and the cards are going to probably be running at very close to essentially their thermal junction. For a lot of enthusiasts, though, the reality is that they don't want cards to be running a thermal junction. You know, people already sometimes get concerned, and they can comment quite negatively when they say, hey, my card, I think it's running hot, and it might be underneath the thermal junction temperature, right? And so it's entirely fine, but they'll be very critical, and they'll be like, I think that the card solution isn't any good because it's running at X temperature. And the reality is that when you're going very constrained right now with a 2-slot based design, even when you're using very good quality heat pipes, a vapor chamber, things along those lines, you're probably going to be running pretty close to the thermal junction target. So for most general users, this isn't something that I think that they're going to want, because it's going to be hotter than they probably want it to be, and probably louder than they want it to be. We are continuing to investigate whether or not there could be the possibility of having like a higher performance 2-fan specialized type design, but it's a very niche type of product offering, and whether or not it really makes sense to kind of spend the design and development on putting that card forth, especially when the vast majority, almost all the chassis in the market, even when you're talking about very, very compact chassis, can readily accommodate something like our 2.5 slot like ProArt, or something, imagine even like a 2.5 slot Prime or something like that, where you're going to have better thermals and you're going to have better acoustics, right? So it doesn't really kind of make sense. But we do offer, again, these type of solutions already, but they're generally not targeted at, let's say, the traditional PC DIY builder. Okay. Paskowitz goes, will the Prime and the ProArt share a similar PCB like TUF and Strix? Right now I don't have that to 100% confirm for you as far as the totality of the PCB, but even if they kind of shared a similar PCB, they won't share the same overall kind of power topology, as Prime is a much higher end card. So even take for instance, like let's say like the capacitors, I can tell you for a fact the capacitors are significantly higher performing on something like the ProArt card than you would have, take for instance, like on the Prime series based graphics card. Prime will continue to use good quality SMT based caps. They'll probably be 5K rated caps or something like that. But take for instance, like on the ProArt series, right? I think we have 20K rated caps, right? And they also have actually different thermal targets, different thermal different thermal limitations in terms of that they go to lower temperature targets and higher temperature targets. And that's also not even jumping into the other types of power components, whether you're talking about the inductors or you're talking about the power stages or things along those lines. So there could be potentially similarity in that regard, but I wouldn't expect them to be. Also, keep in mind that technically the PCB, the size of the card is also a bit more compact, right? The Prime series is demonstrably shorter, right? It's 269 versus the ProArt, which is 300. Correct, Mike. ProArt 4070, that is currently our kind of target pricing. I would like to see standard ROG motherboards with the BTF GPU. So what you mean by standard ROG? Do you mean Strix, ROG Strix, as opposed to formal ROG? Because yeah, right now we currently only have a BTF, which can take, for instance, like in the Maximus class, right? But I think right now it's still early on, right? You know, I think as long as we continue to get feedback, there's always the opportunity. And again, there's a reason why we put BTF on the TUF Gaming model, because the TUF Gaming model is already positioned even below things like the ROG Strix series. So we purposely offered essentially an option so that if people wanted to get into BTF, they didn't have to go all the way up to the ROG series, right? They were able to go to TUF Gaming series. Okay. All right. So that is going to be Prime Series based graphics cards for you guys. And again, availability should be looking for those cards probably sometime in July, late July timeframe. Okay. All right. So let's see. BTF company. Okay. What else we got here? All right. So let's go into. Let's do a little bit on the keyboard and the mouse side. Okay. So this one is a pretty exciting one for me to talk about. So as many of you guys are aware, we've been doing a lot of really awesome things in terms of our peripherals. And so we, of course, have had the ROG Azoth, which has really been, I think, a community favorite. It's been really recognized by not only media, but the community as an outstanding kind of true hybrid, where it's a premium quality keyboard in terms of its fit, finish, and functionality, attention to detail, whether it's, you know, the improved stabilizers, the bin switches, tri-mode connectivity, ultra low latency, great battery life, right? You know, the double shot keycaps, right? The multiple layers of sound dampening foam. So really the big thing that our team wanted to do with the update to essentially the ROG Azoth, which is now coined the ROG Azoth Extreme, was how could we kind of even go to the next level, right? And what we really were looking to do was to leverage some of the really kind of specialized design details that you saw on more premium and kind of niche models within the custom keyboard market, because in that respect, even kind of premium or custom keyboards already weren't matching, let's say, the gaming functionality or performance that you would have on something like the Azoth, because you could already buy a more expensive custom keyboard and it wouldn't even have, let's say, wireless connectivity, or wouldn't have Bluetooth, or wouldn't have onboard memory profiles, or wouldn't have as long battery life, or it wouldn't have omni pairing support, where I could have my keyboard and my mouse simultaneously attached to a single adapter, right? So there was already a lot of things you were missing. So our perspective was, how would we continue to evolve the fit, the finish, and the functionality from the keyboard experience and typing experience, but then also even look to maximize the performance spec that we could have for the keyboard. So what we ultimately settled on here is going to be the ROG Azoth Extreme. So the first update you're going to have is, of course, the overall the fit and the finish of the material. With the original Azoth, the top cover was, of course, going to be metal, but then the base was plastic, and that was purposely done be able to maximize the RF performance. So the RF performance of radio frequency was critical, because this is a gaming keyboard, right? We need to be able to have ultra low latency, be able to maintain that sub 1 milliseconds in terms of this the latency, be able to maintain outstanding polling rate stability, and also not have the RF chip kind of be attempting to pull too heavily, which could also affect battery life. But we know a lot of people really wanted kind of that more kind of complete experience. So we're able to do a really great job, and now pretty much moving to the totality of the most of the keyboard is now all in metal. There is a little bit of cutout actually right here. You won't see it's on the top, or there's a little section that's actually spaced out, which still actually allows for the antennas, so that we can still maintain that ultra low latency, that sub 1 milliseconds. It's actually sub 0.9 milliseconds in terms of the actual RF latency. Still really great polling rate stability, and that's the other part. So outside of that premium construction finish, we also upgraded this, so this has 8K wired and 8K wireless. So you're gonna move up from the original Azoth, which is 1K wired and wireless, to now 8K wired and wireless. Although the original Azoth will see an upgrade in that, because it will be compatible with the ROG polling rate booster. So in that respect, the Azoth will even get better with just a very basic adapter. If you want to add that in there, you will be able to get better than 1K polling performance. Now, some of the other things that we've gone ahead and also upgraded for this model are going to include a few other items. So let me go ahead and bring these up here. Next one here is, if we take a little bit more closely at kind of the internals, we did some pretty kind of cool things. So The original Azoth already had a custom PCB, a custom RF chip, right? We already had multiple layers of sound dampening material like the Poron and the silicone pads. But for this generation, we've gone ahead and added this really cool carbon fiber positioning plate. And we've also added what's called a leaf spring mechanism. And the really, really unique thing is we actually have a specialized adjusting mechanism. So traditionally in most keyboards that have like leaf springs or some form of adjustment to try to kind of go from hard to soft, there's a lot of complexity from the user. They literally have to disassemble the whole thing and decide on kind of one or the other, but they can't dynamically kind of switch between them very easily. But the really cool thing that we did is at the overall down here at the base, you'll actually see these small little detents. These detents actually have different Z heights. And there's a small switch that's on the back of the keyboard that'll show you that when you switch that switch position, it actually will go from essentially like a hard position to a soft position. And that will allow you to essentially have a different feel and typing experience. For probably gaming and when you really want consistency and really ultra fast actuation, you probably want a little bit more stiffness. But for maybe longer duration in terms of typing sessions, a lot more kind of document usage, things like that, maybe you want a little bit more bounce, a little bit more give within the keyboard, you can go to soft. And you don't have to disassemble a keyboard and make any adjustments. You can literally just go and flip the switch and that will adjust the position for that and you will dynamically have a different feel. I would also advise that if you even want more adjustment, we have designed it to be pretty easy to just disassemble. So you remove the screws, you pull out the actual silicone pad, and that will even give you a little bit more bounce. So if you're somebody that wants even a little bit more of this kind of bounce experience, a little bit more of this flex type of experience, then that's something that's cool. And that's also part of the reason why we have the carbon fiber positioning plate, which is important as well, because this not only has a resonance performance, which is really, really good. It doesn't have kind of a pingy type of characteristic you will get with like steel, brass, or kind of metal plates. It's similar to kind of FR4, very good in that experience, but it also has very good torsional rigidity and flex, but still very high strength performance as well. So you're going to see here that carbon fiber positioning plate, the Poron, and the silicone pad. This can be removed to again customize the feel and customize the acoustics, the adjustment level, the custom PCB, and then of course the metal construction. So a lot of really cool elements in that then alongside the 8K wired and wireless. But it didn't stop there. When we go to the back as well, you're going to see here's the actual switch where you can see it gives you that option right there where you have the hard and the soft. So all you do is just move that into one position or the other and you'll be able to go ahead and have that adjusted experience. You have a nice little storage bay for your wireless adapter. This is just like the original Azoth as well, and it supports of course not only Armory Crate but Armory Crate Gear, which is the lightweight peripheral utility. Then it also still maintains compatibility with OS X, plus we still maintain hardware level control, so you can control lighting and modes through the function and the arrow keys. So you pretty much have 4 different levels of control. Compared to many keyboards too, we have pretty much I think best in class battery life in the industry, and you're also going to get 6 onboard memory profiles as well. So tons of customization in terms of you could have a profile dedicated for certain games, different applications, just dynamically switch between them. So a lot of flexibility on that side on there as well. Some other cool additions that we've also made here is the OLED display, which a lot of people remember from the original Azoth, has seen an upgrade. So we went from black and white, essentially a monochrome display, to now we've gone ahead and moved over to a full color display, and it's also touch. So we still even keep a really nice premium, of course, dial on there that you can make an adjustment with, right? Multifunction, right? You can go up, down, and kind of push in as well for adjustments, but then you also have full touch control to that screen. You can put GIFs, you can put animations, you can put stat screen information, so you can see things like clock speeds, temperatures, frequency, visualization information, notifications, tons of cool stuff. All of that stuff can of course be all customized and accessible via the Armory Crate software suite. So that's another addition. This will use the upgraded switches that we already had in the refresh for the Azoth, so either our ROG Snow or Storm based switches. So they're factory lubricated, outstanding in terms of keycap wobble and feel, stem performance, really nice quality material in terms of their housing, really nice acoustic resonance property as well. So that'll continue to be there. And the unit will also come with this cool weighted silicone wrist rest. So if you want, I don't like to use a wrist rest, but if you like to use a wrist rest, it will actually come included with this weighted silicone wrist rest, which will be included inside the box. So you have that. And then also from an adjustment perspective, if you want to adjust the feet, if I didn't note it, these feet, it's pretty sweet. these guys right here, these are magnetic, and they're actually going to be different heights. So there's ones that are kind of lower and taller. So there's different sets in there, and they're just magnetic. You can just pull them off, pop them on, and you can have a really nice angled adjustment level depending on what your preference is for that height and position of the Azoth. So overall, the Azoth Extreme is going to be a quite special keyboard. There's really nothing like it in the industry. You cannot find another keyboard that literally will have this level of build quality, customization, premium elements, and top level gaming performance and spec, right? The AK wired and wireless, the battery life, the profile support, the ROG Omni support, that ultra low latency, the optimized debounce delay. There's literally nothing else. There's literally $500 keyboards. They won't give you half the things that this model has. And so the bridge between the two, we think we're, again, offering an outstanding value and experience that if you kind of want a true ultra class kind of keyboard in terms of the keyboard experience, in terms of the build and the typing experience, but you also still want that outstanding gaming experience, then the Azoth Extreme is going to be a great option. So this will be looking to launch next month in start of Q3. So we will have still the original Azoth won't go away, but we will now be offering the Azoth Extreme. And right now, tentatively, our kind of projected MSRP, we're going to keep the current Azoth at about that $249, so that $250 price point. Sometimes you see it, of course, go on promos. And when it goes on promo, it's even a better deal, right? I mean, it's already, I think, a very solid deal at its current pricing. And this will be projected to be at a $500 MSRP price point. Okay? So... So Paskowitz, so I think this is interesting. So you kind of go, the worst part about the Azoth Extreme is that I already invested in a high-end custom keyboard. So, you know, that would have been our argument, that we would have thought that the Azoth is the better option, that if you wanted to invest into a good custom keyboard, that's the better option because you would have gotten the best balance of the spec, right? And again, here, this is why we're trying to offer something that doesn't really exist in the marketplace for the people that were going and spending, you know, $300, $400, $500 plus. Here, they are getting something that's quite unique. Now, you need something like analog. I can't give you all the details, but we are looking at that as an option. But the one disadvantage of something like analog is there's not a lot of switch options, and it's not really a great option for a traditional keyboard experience and a gaming experience. It's almost only really a gaming experience. And the reason why is that once it's kind of set up and actuated for just that kind of input performance in that analog switch design, it's not really a great experience for traditional typing, because in traditional typing, that actuation, customizable actuation and customizable input pretty much will go out the window, and it could actually lead to be quite problematic for when you use it as a traditional kind of keyboard, right? Or it's going to be kind of get more finicky, and that you're going to have to kind of default back and forth between different variables. So we are evaluating something, and rest assured we will have some really exciting updates for somebody that wants that, and we think we're going to do some really cool stuff in that regard. But we also really see that the vast majority of the keyboard community is very happy right now with just traditional based keyboard designs and maintaining outstanding latency performance of what we can already achieve with the traditional switch and debounce delay tuning, along with the low latency in the RF, while also maintaining the most flexibility when it comes to switches, right? Because tons of people have just different preference when it comes to their linears or their tactiles, excuse me, or clicky or whatever they're looking for, right? And literally the thousands of switch permutations that are out there. So I think that was the reason why we went with this direction, which we feel is much more in alignment with the totality of the market versus being hyper niched at something that's very small, if that makes sense. Okay. Michael goes, would love a version with the numeric keypad plus USB pass-through. Thanks for that feedback. Yeah, it's something that we're talking about. I think for the most part, for most people, at least within the gaming segment, they are only looking for a TKL based kind of model. So that's where we put the priority. But we are aware some people really love things like the Claymore. I know there's people that are wondering, hey, when are we going to maybe have like an ROG Claymore 3 model, or seeing something like that, or even maybe like a high performance like numpad option that we could produce to kind of support something like the Azoth, right? But just so if people wanted to have that, they could have something like a 10 key that they could add on, right, and have it be connected via maybe the ROG Omni receiver 2.4 via Bluetooth. So it kind of pairs up holistically, but also isn't there when they don't need it, right? They could decouple it, right? So Jack Benincourt says wowzers. I would definitely agree. Lano C says looks awesome, right? So overall, that is going to be the update, guys, on the ROG Azoth Extreme. Very, very excited about that. So hopefully you guys are excited for it as well. And again, rest assured, you're going to see a lot more information on that guy in the not too distant future. Let me finish just kind of going through a couple of those quick images. I'll re-show it to you again. Hey, Snef, man, fantastic to have you join the stream. You missed some good stuff, but you know, if you probably caught some of the other no's, you've been able to see it. But let me just go ahead and again show you guys off. Again, we're going to probably be looking to launch the Azoth Extreme, like I said, next month. So if you guys are interested in getting the Azoth, we will have that in the not too distant future. So again, really quick recap. Full now metal body, but we still have an optimized cutout to be able to maintain our best-in-class RG Speed Nova tech for that ultra-low latency, so that's sub 0.9 milliseconds, right? Great battery life, right? You still have the Omni receiver support, so both keyboard and mouse simultaneous. Tri-mode connectivity, so that's going to be Bluetooth 2.4 and USB-C. You have 8K wired and 8K wireless. You have six onboard profiles that'll be available. You have the magnetic feet in different heights that can be attached. You're also going to then be moving over, of course, into the touch display right here, which is now touch and full color that will be on this model as well. Moving out to that, when we go back into the interior, right, we'll go back in here and we'll go to like a little bit of exploded view. You're going to have that new carbon fiber positioning plate, right, and we then also have that leaf spring design along with the specialized detints, which allow for that dynamic adjustment between hard and soft. So you can just flip the switch on the back of the unit to be able to go ahead and make that customization based on your preference. Plus also easy disassembly, so that if you want to remove that silicone plaid to have a little bit more flex, then you can also do that. The switch that I was talking about right here, you can see is on the back. Very easy for you, just go ahead and flip that. And that's really important because a lot of even in the custom market keyboards where they tell you you can customize it, it's a pain, because even if you disassemble the whole thing, a lot of people don't have like a torque screwdriver, so the torque application that they might have to things like a gasket design or like a leaf spring design, it's going to be variable, so it's not even consistently applied. And so here in our mechanism, it's very consistent going from one level to the other level, so you kind of have that clear kind of confidence that it's always going to consistently happen, and also doesn't require disassembly for you to achieve that, which I think is a really big plus point, right? So yeah, those are a couple of the really cool updates that we have there in terms of that. And then as I also noted, will come included with the silicone weighted wrist rest as well for the unit. Okay, so staying with the peripheral updates here, I also did want to touch on the ROG Harpe Extreme. So the ROG Harpe is going to be our new flagship kind of mouse. So we of course have currently already a flagship that we just launched with the ROG Curious 2, which was kind of like the ergo brother to the symmetrical mouse that we had with the ROG Harpe. So both of those were 54 grams, had amazing sensors in there, tri-mode connectivity, right? You know, optimized, of course, switches, right? Really outstanding click latency, Omni receiver support. So for here, we already had a really outstanding based option, and here we just kind of wanted to even go crazier. So with this model right here, the ROG Harpe Extreme, we are going to be using carbon fiber composite that we're going to have in the body. So we go to even a lighter weight. So this is going to be going to 47 grams. Of course, with that carbon fiber, this is true carbon fiber weave. The really cool thing with this is it actually has to be uniquely cut and matched and paired. So the cool thing is kind of like each Harpe Extreme will be unique. And if you notice, we even take the time to kind of match these when we're actually cutting it out. So they're all matched to be contiguous and sequential, and again, unique characteristically. So it's really cool. You maintain that really outstanding fit and finish and feel. There is a polishing and a coating that also goes on top of the unit as well. The coating has also been enhanced to be, I'd say, a bit more grippy for people that want that preference compared to, I think, in the prior generation where they felt that you needed that. Now, there will also be some other cool things outside of the weight, right? So you're going to have maintain the ultra high performance sensor that we have, so that 42,000 DPI sensor, the RG Aimpoint, that's already the best in the industry. We maintain the tri-mode connectivity, the Bluetooth, the multiple onboard memory profiles, right? The carbon fiber body, the ROG Omni sensor that we're going to have on here, the 8K wired and wireless polling rate support, just like the Azoth Extreme as well. And the skates, I don't have an image for you on the bottom, but the skates are really cool for this generation. So we already had really outstanding skates, what we call our ROG Omni skates, which were 100% PTFE free, and they have outstanding tracking performance. And we had already been including 2 sets. So there was a set that was larger and broader depending on your mouse movement, and then we had our traditional kind of omni feet, which are really great for kind of just flexibility and omnidirectionality across different surfaces. But the new version will actually come with Corning Gorilla Glass skates. So if you want super outstanding smooth tracking performance on any type of textile surface, or essentially non-glass type of surface, then you can use the included Corning Gorilla Glass skates, which also have outstanding wear performance, right? They won't wear at the same level that you do have with traditional PTFE feet, but you're actually literally going to get 3 sets of skates that'll come with the mouse. You get the Corning Gorilla Glass skates, and then you get 2 sets of PTFE skates. So you'll get the rounded larger set, and then you'll also get the traditional Omni set. So it'll be up to you to pretty much put whichever one that you want and comes included on there. So again, we think that this is really going to set kind of the benchmark there for that symmetrical, lightweight, ultra performance mouse, which really is just going to be outstanding, maintain the performance and the feature set that we're known for, the build quality that we're known for when it comes to our mice and the performance. So really excited about this guy. This guy also coming probably a little bit later within the quarter of Q3 in terms of the time frame. And right now our kind of tentative projected price point is this will be coming in a bit higher than what we have with our current Harpe or Keras, which again, remember that the Harpe is already going to get an upgrade beyond 1K polling, so it's already an amazing mouse. Super great build quality, outstanding sensor, has a lot of what I've already talked about. It's just a little bit heavier. When we're talking about heavy, it's a 54 gram mouse. It's already super ultra light, but it will support greater than 1K polling with the ROG polling rate booster, which will be launching shortly. So you'll already be able to even upgrade that one if you don't want to go beyond that price point, and you can just use the ROG polling rate booster with that mouse, right? Whereas this one, of course, will come included with it, and it will have that 8K wired and wireless. And the projected price point here is you're going to probably be looking at about $250 for this one. Okay. All right. So let me see right there. Paskowitz goes, I love the OG Harpe. I'm a sucker for carbon fiber. So this is an Insta. Yeah, I mean, it's sweet. Again, the original Harpe is already fantastic, but if you even want that lighter weight, that higher performance, and you really love that carbon fiber, then definitely it's going to be pretty sweet in that regard. And I think it's going to be hopefully pretty popular amongst the community. Yes, I believe I did note that like I said, you only would want to use the Corning Gorilla Glass skates on essentially a textile weave surface. So if you use something like our ROG Moonstone, or if you use another type of glass type of surface, you of course want to use the traditional PTFE skates, right? The traditional PTFE skates, they're going to be great for any type of surface, really great performance. But if you want that super fast tracking performance, you also want the longer reliability, not reliability, but the durability performance of essentially the Corning Gorilla Glass skates. Those are going to be only advantageous on using it on a textile weave. You don't want to use it on a hard surface, so you wouldn't want to use it on something like glass or ceramic. Okay. All right. So that is going to be the, excuse me, not the ROG Harpe. That is going to be the ROG Harpe. So that is the ROG Harpe Extreme, guys. Again, that is going to be our new flagship mouse coming a bit later on in probably about mid to late Q3 timeframe. Okay, very cool. All right, as we're getting ready, kind of close towards the end here, got a couple of last ones for you. Delta II is going to be another cool update here. So this is going to be our new kind of flagship gaming headset that we'll be coming in with. So this is going to be finally a follow-up, kind of pretty much to the original Delta. So as many of you know, like the original Delta, along with even the follow-up Deltas that we have really kind of always been consistently my favorite series in terms of our headsets that we've had. So the Delta II will differ a little bit. So the original Delta, which actually here I have the Delta S, which this one will still offer. This one is actually 2.4 and Bluetooth, and then the standard original Delta was a wired based USB-C option, and that integrated of course the DAC and amp already inside of it, and ESSC DAC was quite nice. I still really love that. For a lot of people, I tell them I think the best option for them in our headphone lineup is to go with the Delta, and then the Delta S is a solid option if you wanted to really have a wireless based unit. This would be kind of a clearer upgrade, I guess, against this model, against the Delta S, and the main reason why is because here we're targeting the wireless connectivity. So this will have 2.4 gigahertz connectivity. It will also have Bluetooth connectivity, but it will also simultaneously be able to have both be active. So if you want to have your phone and your, let's say your desktop be connected at the same time, then you can actually take the call, right, and be able to adjust that. The cool thing is actually the volume for both channels is on each respective ear cup. So take for instance, if you got a phone call, you could immediately adjust the volume on one side, and then the other side you could either increase or lower it. And so you have both actually being able to have be simultaneously connected, or you could switch off from one to the other. We then have a 10mm super wideband microphone, so this has been notably improved upon. I think it will probably be the best performing mic that we've had within any headset. So if this is something that you've wanted to see improved upon, we have definitely looked at that. An improvement, I think, further within the build material. We already had a high level of vibration performance since the Delta S, which was an upgrade from the original Delta when it came to the overall reliability and kind of the chafing performance that you have from the internal ear cups. These are still, of course, detachable ear cups, and you get two sets. One is going to be more for max isolation, and one's going to be more for kind of breathability that you're going to have. Both are going to be present there. We also have kind of tweaked a little bit of the inlet design to have the lighting be a little bit more fronts pronounced and kind of visible, but still very clean and refined in terms of the ID design that you're going to have on the unit. 50mm titanium based drivers, so really nice in terms of kind of the tonality, the clarity, and the detail representation that we're going to have there. We also changed the actual sound tuning curve, and so when you have like a sound tuning curve, there's a lot of different options within the marketplace. Some can kind of prioritize some parts of kind of the frequency spectrum than others. Here we've kind of leveraged what is commonly known as the Harman curve, which is really well recognized as being a very, I would say, preferable kind of sound range for the vast majority of individuals when it comes to kind of having a preference across, you know, where the bass is, where the essentially the lower frequency, the mid-range, and the treble detail is going to be. For I think a lot of people, they consider it a well-balanced type of target. It's not necessarily super bumpy, and it's not super kind of sibilant or super detailed. It just hits a really, really nice balance for the widest range of content, so music, movies, or games. At the same time, we have gone ahead and kind of taken that and evolved it and added into ROG kind of tweaking to it, where we think we've enhanced a little bit more to have a little bit better detailing and tracking, which is of course important for a gaming headset, while still maintaining very, very good performance and a sound signature for, again, music, movies, games, for general kind of experience when you're using the headset just as a headphone as opposed to a headset, right? So when you're using it as a general user. So this will be the ROG Delta II. I'm very excited about this guy. Don't have the finalized MSRP yet for this model. Target time frame probably going to be somewhere around mid to late Q3 time frame. But again, yeah, if you're going to be looking for an upgrade, I think really specifically compared to probably something like this, like the ROG Delta S, then this will be kind of a clear upgrade from there. Or definitely if you're running something much older and you're looking for, you know, a big improvement in terms of the quality and the detail of the sound, right, the stability and the performance of the wireless transmission, the battery life, that dual mode connectivity, all that good stuff, that is going to be the ROG Delta II. Let me see any quick things that kind of came in on that side. Michael goes, I want the Delta II. H2O goes, when are the polling rate booster coming out? Hopefully the polling rate boosters should be out next month in July, probably I think mid to late July. We'll have more details in the group as well as in a stream, clearly communicating when it actually will be available in the channel, but I think the hope is probably to have it be available sometime in late July timeframe for the polling rate booster. Hey, Demi. I would recommend always just be part of our community and watch out to our social channels if you're interested in kind of giveaways or things like that. We do quite a number of actually giveaway opportunities, so there's always a chance to kind of just be monitoring our socials in our community group for when we're doing kind of giveaways, and you can enter into those. Okay. I need to ask, how do you compare the Delta II to the Theta 7.1? I would say that they're quite different because the driver designs are very, very different. The Theta is a very special kind of headset because it had a combination of kind of like a standard kind of legacy type of driver and then kind of an electrostat type of driver, which was really good for kind of detail and nuance. But it also created a little bit more of a challenge in terms of how you bridge between the detail and the mid-range and the bass performance. It also is a multi-driver headphone, so it literally has more than two drivers, or essentially two speakers. So it's a true 7.1 headset. So for people that really wanted an ultra high level of immersion, it's still an outstanding headset in that regard. It's also, though, notably quite a bit heavier. I don't know the exact weight differential, but I would say it's probably over twice as heavy. I personally am okay. I mean, I'm a bigger individual. You know, I'm about 6'2", you know, about 225. So it's okay for me, but I think that for some people it might be a little bit fatiguing after a period of time, that it could be a bigger headset. I still think it's a very good headset in terms of its overall sound signature and performance, but I think for the vast majority of people, I think the Delta and the Delta II will be a better, more balanced headset for them, not only in terms of the totality of kind of music, movies, and games, but I think in terms of also the weight, the breathability, and other factors there. There is also the trickiness of with the multi-driver headset. Sometimes you would want to change it between kind of the stereo mode to the multi-driver mode. And even that can sometimes lead to a little bit more of a jarring experience, because maybe you're kind of listening to music in the multi-driver mode and it can be okay, but maybe you don't think it sounds as good, and that's because you didn't switch it back into the stereo mode to get the kind of better experience, where the vast majority of kind of music content is usually going to be stereo, although you now have a lot more spatial audio, so it could be an interesting thing from that perspective. I still think a great option. It's the reason why we still offer it, but I think for the majority of users, a better choice would probably be one of the Delta models as opposed to the Theta. Okay. I have two Theta. Oh, well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, if you really like it, I mean, I have the Theta too. I think it's a great unit, but I think for a lot of people, the other thing too is I think the Theta also kind of performs best when you have a discrete DAC and amp, and I don't like to make the assumption that people necessarily always have a discrete DAC and amp to leverage that, and that's kind of also one of the inherent challenges of like a more analog based type of headphone than a digital headphone, right? Where a digital headphone has a very consistent audio experience from device to device to device, because generally the DAC and the amp is integrated within the headset or the headphone, versus with an analog based design, you're going to be very reliant on the audio output performance of whatever you're connecting to, which can vary a lot, right? Like a phone can be very different than a laptop, which can be very different than a console, right? Like the experience is quite variable. Sometimes they can be good, sometimes they can be quite poor, and other times they can be kind of like okay, and maybe every once in a while sometimes they'll be really good, right? So it can be quite variable. Oh, okay, that is going to be the Delta II. So let me see lastly where we're rounding out. So we've gone pretty heavy today, covering in a lot of other items. I haven't even covered everything. I think I still got the BE19 Pro, and we'll wrap up with just with a couple of monitors here and a couple of really quick things. So we'll see if we can kind of wrap up everything maybe in 10 or 15 minutes, guys, and we'll kind of round things out. So let's see here if we can go pretty quick through the remainder. All right, the next one I'm going to leave is a really basic update. I'm not going to give you a lot of details. We'll wait to get a little bit more, but I just want to give you an update. We're going to have an update to the ROG chair, the SL400. We're actually going to have essentially a lower price point offering where we've kind of done intelligent adjustments to kind of bring down some of the costs and be able to still offer a premium quality chair that's more ergonomically focused with a high level of breathability, which was really the beautiful thing about what we had with the SL400, but at a lower price point. Now this will still definitely be premium for a lot of people. The current SL400, of course, is going to be, let me actually show you, see if I can bring up images of the two, just so we can kind of show the two here. Okay, so let's see. You might not be able to see the difference, but we'll kind of do it a little bit. Okay, so here the the SL400 or the Destrier is $900, so very expensive, but we think already very competitive against a lot of the very premium chairs on the market in terms of its fit, finish, and material and performance. But here our goal is to essentially be hitting a model that will probably be estimated around $500. So it will be a noticeable price price reduction, right? So again, this isn't a replacement. So RJ, when you're going, what, I already have the chair, you don't have to worry. This is not a replacement. It's essentially just for people that have kind of wanted that chair and there's like, wow, it's just a little bit too much, and so they have a little bit more of that dispensable income. They're not trying to buy something like we're already going to be offering a cheaper chair shortly next month with the ROG Chariot Core X, which will be a lower price point, so that will be kind of filling in that. And we also have the Atheon, which we're getting ready to launch too, which will be a fabric based option. So we'll have quite a number of new options actually within Q3 at a range of different price points, but these will kind of still be in the highest end tier that we'll have. But that's still a big difference, right, between, you know, right now where you have one at 9 and where you have another one at 500, right? So that's quite a big difference in terms of the price corresponding delta. And where you'll see kind of changes is like here on the back of this model, if we went to the rear image, the entire rear skeleton has this really nice full metal X-frame design. So you won't have that like X-frame design right here. You can also see that base is in full metal, and here it's going to be in plastic, right? The acoustic baffle is also going to be different. There's also some differences here in some of the substanding material. Now I can still tell you, definitely feeling it. It still has definitely a premium feel to it, but there is going to be a noticeable date in those subtle touches and in some of those material choices, right, where you're going to have where you've seen that there's a price reduction, but it's still going to be a robust, durable, performant, breathable, ergonomic chair, which I still think looks great. So I think it's going to be a great addition that we're going to have here, but it is really targeted at people that didn't want to necessarily go up to that heavier price, that higher price point that we had with the SL400. So here we'll have the SL401. Even though the number is higher, it's actually going to be positioned below it. So again, we're projecting probably around 499. I don't want to give you a final price point because that could potentially change. Maybe it could come down. I don't think it would probably go above that, but right now, let's just say we're projecting around $500, and right now we know that the current SL400 is essentially $899. So it will be a noticeably lower price point, right? Yeah. He goes, I love it. I find it's better than the leather chairs that have leather that can crack over time. Yeah, I would agree. I absolutely love that chair. I love the breathability. I love the support. I love the adjustable lumbar too that it has there on the model. So you're still going to get a lot of the key design elements on here that I think really make this as a great option. But again, it'll just be coming in at a lower price point. Okay. What about the monitor light? When is that expected to release? So the ROG monitor arm and the ROG monitor light, the light bar, both of those should probably be looking to come in next month. Okay, so we've already covered those previously, so I'm not covering on them, but we will touch on them when they officially get released. But yeah, they should be releasing next month in July. So for both the monitor arm and for the light bar. Okay. Okay, so let's go here. Outside of the new chair, let me go, where did we say? Okay, so yeah, we have the BE19000. I know there was somebody that asked. I don't know if they're still in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and note on it here. So let's go ahead and we'll just touch on this. So the BE19000 will essentially be our next ROG Wi-Fi 7 router. The big difference here, well, this will be a tri-band based unit as opposed to a quad band based unit. So the BE98 Pro is a quad band based unit, ultra high performance unit. This is still going to be ultra high performance. It's just going to be tri-band as opposed to being a quad band based unit, and still within the tri-band that's going to be outstanding because you get still that dedicated high-speed 6 gigahertz band. If you also want to be able to do mesh, tri-mode is going to be favorable because that means that you have one band that you can connect between the two nodes and still be leaving two bands exposed, with as opposed to a traditional dual band router. If you use one of the bands to connect to two nodes, you are essentially only left with a single band. So this unit will still give you an ultra high performance based chipset. I believe tentatively right now this is a 2.6 gigahertz quad core based SoC, 2 gigabytes of DDR4 memory. We have a specialized heatsink assembly to be able to maintain outstanding performance on here. There's a really cool new customized PCB with translucent and kind of diffused lighting design, which is in here, which I think looks fantastic. It looks really, really, really cool. So if you like the lighting design elements on here, we have, of course, a special high-performance specialized antenna design in here, which helps to improve not only the attenuation performance, but the range performance that we're going to have on this router. This will also be the first unit that we will be launching in the market that will be featuring the AFC technology. And I'll touch about AFC in a moment if you guys don't know what that is, as part of Wi-Fi 7 and how kind of wireless bands work. But you'll see really, really nice connectivity options where you can see you've got 10G, you've got another 10G, so you got dual 10G ports that are going to be on this model, and that would work as WAN and LAN. So that means if you had even WAN internet coming up to 10G, you can support that. If you want to be able to have another LAN port work as the WAN and then have the dual 10 LAN ports, then you can also do that. And then of course you can also see that you've got quad, that's right, quad 2.5 gigabit Ethernet also on this unit. So very, very impressive in terms of its overall hardwire specification support. So it's not just the ultra high speed and low latency you get from Wi-Fi 7, but you're also going to have that outstanding low latency and high throughput for the wired Ethernet as well. You have, of course, 2 Type A ports, and that USB 3 port along with that quad-core SoC chipset offers really, really great performance. In reality, you're going to be easily seeing upwards of 150 plus megabytes performance for the actual attached USB storage. So you're talking about like NAS level performance when directly attached to your router. So if you attach like an external drive to the router and you want to use that as a form of kind of network attached storage, you can get very, very good USB performance because of the chipset performance. The chipset performance will also lean itself to give you better improvement in terms of Ethernet performance and things like running a VPN directly on the router and a whole lot more. We're also going to see some new cool stuff that we're going to be doing in the firmware, like we're going to have dedicated actually SSID bands that could be configured specific to use case scenarios. So if you want to have a dedicated band that you can set up just for gaming or to a guest network or to an IoT network, you can default and set those things up. This is kind of like VLAN, but making it simpler and easier for people to be able to configure. We'll still have acceleration and quality of service optimizations you can do for streaming or for gaming or for media, for things along those lines. The AFC support, without getting super complicated, pretty much what the router will do is it will intelligently analyze the kind of the RF environment around you, and essentially if there's space that essentially will allow the router to operate at a higher power output level to even get better performance, it will do that. This is conditionally based on essentially freed up spectrum and performance that the FCC has essentially enabled for North America. So the router essentially will evaluate that environment, and it says that, hey, if essentially there's not some conflicting parameters where I can increase the output performance, because in most situations wireless and routers don't actually maintain higher performance over, let's say, certain other types of wireless signals. If there isn't something contending that would stop the router from essentially creating this increase in power output, it can offer even a higher level of output performance that would even give you better speed and even better range. So this is a very exciting technology. This will be the first model that will launch with AFC, but our other Wi-Fi 7 routers will also get AFC support in a future firmware update that'll probably come like late Q3, early Q4 timeframe. That will also have to do with some other really cool other stuff that I won't get into, like MLO, where this unit will support multi-link operation, where like you can aggregate bands together. So like you can have your 2.4 and your 5 gigahertz simultaneously combined together to give you more throughput, better stability, better performance. So again, if you're really kind of looking for the best experience possible, you know, always our kind of high-end routers are going to be a great choice, like the BE96, the BE98, now the BE19000. We're also getting ready to launch right now the BE88, which is a model that has 8 Ethernet ports on there, including SFP, dual 10G, and a whole bunch of 2.5 gig, although that's only a dual band unit, but it's also significantly lower in price point. So a lot of really cool updates in that regard. So some cool stuff going on that side. Hey Rafin, I don't know if that answered all your questions. I tried to clarify some of the design differences there between the BE98 Pro and between the BE19000. With like I said, the main differential for most users is really going to be the quad band versus the tri-band, because even when we talk about things like the chipset, the DRAM design, they're going to be pretty similar. The BE98 Pro will even have a little bit more of a specialized antenna design, which will give you a little bit further range, but overall the range is going to be pretty close to each other. And in most situations, both units I would probably say are going to be most comfortable in a space of between about like 2,600 to probably 2,800 square feet. Beyond that, you could still potentially have coverage, but then you would want to start probably evaluating if you wanted to have some type of mesh configuration to supplement with the router. As far as the rest of the Ethernet connections, they're both going to be dual Gen G, have multiple, of course, options when it comes to 2.5, have USB WAN, failover support, assignable WAN configurations, and a lot of other intelligent functions. Although, keep in mind that, as I noted, this will be the first model that will be shipping with that AFC and that MLO support. Okay. Snef goes, I saw the white one at Computex. Yes! I didn't want to talk about that. Sadly, right now, I can tell you we will not be offering the white model anymore at launch. We are kind of evaluating a couple other things. So right now I can't give you any more details on that. But as of right now, do not expect to see essentially like a BE19000 in white. Essentially, we'll only have a black version, and then just stay tuned in the future where we'll try to make an announcement regarding kind of like the first ROG Rapture router in white for a later date, but we don't even have a time frame to disclose for that, so that'll just be coming at a much later date. So at this time right now, the only official model in relation to the 19,000 will just be the black model. So thanks, Snef, for that question. Is there an expected MSRP? Not one that I can give you right now, but of course, as being that it's tri-band, it will be at a lower price point than the BE9800, but it will be more expensive, of course, than a model like the BE96. So if you want to kind of consider that, if you want to kind of, you know, spice the two, right, you can kind of look at the cost of the BE96, and then you can look at the cost of the B98. So the B96, right, technically the MSRP is 700. Usually it's on promo quite a bit. Like right now it's on sale for 630. And then of course the B98 is more. So you can kind of probably add a little bit more to the cost of the B96, but be underneath the price of the B98. And you'll be in that ballpark, but I don't want to give you a specific MSRP as we haven't finalized that MSRP target yet, okay? Michael goes, I love my BE98 Pro VPN and MLO. I would 100% agree with you. Yep. So RJ Walter goes, on another question, I have the Black Hyperion Tower with the ROG Strix 4090 OC. I see there's a new version of both. Can I just keep my case and the card right? The new 4090 just has that different cable, right? But the new has Hyperion. Yes. So technically you could. I mean, the ROG BTF graphics card, right, technically. So I don't know if I have the image over here. See if I have it on this side. You technically need a motherboard to support the ROG BTF based graphics card. So it's very important to understand that you can't take a traditional, you can't take a traditional motherboard and use a BTF based graphics card, right? So if we take a look here, this is the ROG Maximus Z790 Hero BTF. So anything BTF has to essentially be there to allow for the BTF to work, right? So you need a BTF motherboard to support a BTF graphics card. You need a BTF chassis to support a BTF based motherboard. So the only thing that is essentially interoperable is that if you had a BTF motherboard, you can use a legacy graphics card or you can use a BTF based graphics card. So you can use either or graphics card, but it doesn't work the other way around. If you have a traditional motherboard, you can't plug in a BTF based graphics card into an older motherboard, okay? So there is always going to be some flexibility, but it depends on kind of what you have. But really it only works from the BTF side going to the other way, not the other way around, if that makes sense. Okay, hopefully that answers your question if that's kind of what you're asking. Okay, so because again here, remember you have the primary slot and then you have the supplemental power, right? And then I guess if we go ahead and look at the graphics card, you can see that the graphics card, same thing, it has the standard power, the standard power and data connector, and then you also have the supplemental power connector, right? And so that is where the difference lies. Okay. All right. So I think, yeah, we're pretty close to, I think, everything I was going to note there. So let me just do recap there. So BTF, we did the Computex displays, the Harpe, the Mjolnir, the Rapture. We didn't talk about the ROG Swift XG27 AQDMG. I don't know if anybody is interested in that. I mean, we did launch it right before Computex, which was essentially the 1440p glossy OLED based display. But I will go ahead and want to touch on, let me go ahead and touch on this guy here. So I will just give you some quick displays and I think that will round it out. But if anybody has any other questions, please feel free and let me know as we just close things out here. So I do want to show first the 5K display and the 6K display. So these are going to be our new ProArt so here we're going to have the, as you see, we're going to have the ProArt PA27JCV, and then we have the ProArt 32 QCV. So we're going to have a 5K. So we already have quite a number of 4K based ProArt based monitors. We already made the announcement at NAB that we're going to have the, of course, the ProArt 8K based display, right? Which is also going to have that super impressive mini LED technology, which over 4,000 lighting zones, right? So setting kind of a new precedence for HDR based performance. And so here, these are just kind of filling in for users that are looking for that ultra high level of pixel density, image clarity, sharpness, and color performance. And so we're going to have a 5K based offering and a 6K based offering. Very impressive PPI based performance, right? You can see outstanding DCI-P3 at 99%. These of course are factory calibrated, Kalman verified. They're going to have the auto KVM, the ambient light sensor. The big thing that I want to touch on is going to be this Lux Pixel technology. This is something brand new that we're introducing. So with a traditional AR or anti-reflection based matte coating, when essentially light hits the panel, along with also higher DPI, you can get a little bit of kind of this shimmer or this specular kind of effect that kind of presents itself. That kind of can keep a little bit of like a shimmer or rainbow effect that can sometimes happen when you're looking at the display. And so we now have actually a secondary diffusion layer that we placed there, which still maintains really outstanding clarity and contrast performance, but also really mitigates that specular kind of characteristic can occur. And so this Lux Pixel technology, we feel really, really excited about helping to kind of reduce that, like I said, shimmer or that sparkle effect, and really maximizing the clarity and the sharpness of the display, which especially with such high resolution displays is really where the value lies here. So we'll have more information coming forth in terms of these monitors that we're going to be having. In total, we'll have 4 target displays that will have the Lux Pixel. So we'll have a 4K option, we'll have a 5K option, and a 6K option, all that feature the Lux Pixel panel design. And then, you know, we'll probably continue to expand that on more monitors over time, but at least initially right now, these will be the first 4 that will offer that, the 4K, the 5K, and the 6K based monitors. Okay. Also, let me see here. For the 8K, just so if anybody wants to see it, if they weren't aware of it, this will be the 8K that we're going to be offering. So this is going to be the PA32KCX. Again, we'll also offer the Lux Pixel technology. Outstanding, of course, color performance, factory calibration. It integrates a colorimeter in there, so it allows for consistent, easy color uniformity, right, and color calibration, because the colorimeter is built in there. It can be automatically set to come in, you know, every 2 weeks, every month. Generally, for probably people in the professional segmentation, you probably would recommend aggressively being somewhere within every 3 to 5 weeks that the colorimeter would be engaged to go through that. You'll see dual Thunderbolt, of course, with USB power delivery up to 96 watts. The peak brightness you can see is 1200 nits. That actually will be probably even a bit over that in terms of actually real world measured performance, but these are kind of the peak verifiable kind of measurements that we'll put in place. You can see right there 4,096 zones, and this also has a higher number of IC controllers. The IC controllers are very important. A lot of people just talk about FALD and the zone count, but the zone count is only part of the discussion. You actually need a certain number of controllers that help to manage how essentially the zones are responding essentially. And the higher number of zones, kind of think of maybe kind of like lanes and then like traffic cops, right? Is that you want to have a high number of lanes, and then you also would want a high number of traffic cops to be able to maximize how everything is moving and ramping. And the higher number of IC controllers along with the high zone count will help to improve not only haloing performance, blooming performance, gradation performance, detail performance, a lot of these things there. So it's really going to offer an amazing experience along with that ultra high resolution as well. So this is a very exciting panel. Again, just continues to show the comprehensiveness of what ProArt offers. Again, where we're going to have everything also later on. We're going to have the micro LED 135-inch display that'll be coming to the market. We have projectors within the ProArt lineup. We even have new ProArt series SDI enabled monitors for professionals that actually have SDI based camera equipment that they want to natively connect to their monitor, which is also quite unique. I don't think there's any other monitor manufacturer that is offering native SDI on their monitors. So we offer a very kind of comprehensive portfolio for users that are in the professional kind of content creation space. Let me see there if there's any quick questions that kind of came up there. Why did the glossy OLED monitor release like out of nowhere where we can expect that on future monitors? It's just something that we were working on, right? You know, of course, it should come out of nowhere because we didn't want to leak it. We wanted to have everybody be surprised in terms of that it was something that we were designing and developing. One of the big differences that we have with, you know, the AQDMG when we were doing the design and the development of that panel was, of course, is that we did this in relation with direct co-work with LGD. So LGD being LG Display Group. So some other manufacturers, what they kind of do is they might maybe bond something on top of an AR-based panel, which is already essentially an anti-reflective based panel, and then add something on top of it. But we actually worked directly with LGD to have a native glossy based implementation, and so that required actually additional facilitation, additional co-working, right, to do. We also did additional tuning to how we actually handled our luminance curve for both SDR and HDR based brightness performance. So there was a lot of things that we were working on. Again, we're very excited to finally be able to offer a native glossy based option to the community. It's not unilaterally, I'd say, a better option. It's just a different option. There are some people that when they can't control their lighting environment, it might be more favorable for them to actually use an AR based panel like what we have with the majority of our other OLED solutions, right? And then we also have kind of intermediate options like semi-glossy with QD OLED options, because ASUS right now is the only manufacturer that literally has a very varied ecosystem for OLED, right? We're the only vendor right now that offers QD OLED and WOLED solutions, and even Japan OLED solutions, right? There's no other monitor manufacturer that's actually working with as large a number of companies with as many type of variations as we are, trying to give the consumer as much choice as possible based on kind of what your preference is going to be. So this is a great model to introduce. Also, I think at its respective price point, you know, I think it's a great option. So, you know, I don't want to say we are committing already to other models, but we're continuing to monitor feedback and adoption on this initial glossy monitor to see if we will then expand that to other options in the future, right? So it's ultimately really, I think, dependent on the community's adoption to really say that if you really do like this glossy, we hope to see strong adoption, and that will give us, you know, additional incentive to kind of go forth and I think look towards doing that on other options that we have available. Whether, you know, somebody asked earlier about like the PG3 UDCP, which already the launch model is going to be an AR based model, but, you know, in theory you could also offer a glossy variant of that as well, right? Okay. So let me go ahead and see there. Any updates on the PG27 AQDP? Nothing right now. I mean, we did announce it at Computex. It's still on track in terms of hopefully its target release, but we probably won't have any more information until I think in late in Q3 timeframe. For anybody that's wondering, that is our kind of next high-end 1440p based monitor. So that's going to be the latest generation, of course, WOLED panel, 1440p, 480 hertz refresh rate, but we're still a bit out from that monitor. So that's the reason why I'm not giving any specific updates on this one. Stardust is, does the AR coding come pre-installed from the manufacturer, or does ASUS add it? It's actually, no, it's part of the standard production process, and that's because you actually have to validate the panel from a production perspective when it comes to things like uniformity and color performance, even burn-in performance. There's a lot of things that has to be done directly at the panel production stage. Now, there's always going to be differences in terms of how the vendor wants to, like I said, control elements in terms of panel binning, firmware tuning, and many other elements that even when a company is using quote unquote the same panel, there can still be a number of notable differences between how those panels operate between one manufacturer and another manufacturer. But that is inherent to the production process. We had to actually kick off an entirely new, essentially coordinated production process with LGD for the development of the AQDMG, right, to essentially have this glossy option. So it's not like inherently you could just decide at that time frame. It literally was it required an entire new kickoff conversation to change the production process, the validation process that also had to subsequently happen as well, which is very important, especially for considerations of things like burn-in warranties and other important kind of criteria when you're talking about the production process and the validation for the display. Okay. So I think that probably carries most of the things I wanted to touch on, guys. I probably missed maybe a couple of little things there that we'll probably maybe touch on a little bit following. We had, I think I have, actually, I'll just do this one last run right here, where we had two displays right here. These are just going to be very basic, just two updates that we had, where we have the TG7 ASUG and the WCS that I'm going to touch on, and then that will wrap things up, guys, for us. And I hope everybody else has, I think, a great weekend, and you guys, you know, take care and take it easy from there. But let me go ahead and finish it up with these guys here. So these are going to be monitors that will be coming very shortly. So for those that are going to be looking for essentially kind of sweet spot pricing for, I think, a couple of 1440p displays, I think these are going to be some great choices for you guys. So let me just quickly show you these two options. One is going to be the ROG Strix XG27 ACG. So if you guys remember, we talked about the ACS, which I already thought was kind of the best sweet spot monitor at $300 for 1440p. It has a great DCI-P3. It's factory calibrated. It has variable refresh. It has a variable overdrive performance. It has a nice 180 hertz refresh rate. It has that nice new compact design. It has USB-C for display alt support. There's a lot of really great things that I love about that display. This monitor is just a slightly tweaked, upgraded version of it. And the main things that you're really getting here is you're going to consistently get the same things that made the ACS monitor really nice, which is that 1440p, 180 hertz. It's G-Sync. It's fast IPS. It has a high DCI-P3 performance, factory calibrated. It has eLNB sync on there, right? Display widget center is on there. It has the USB-C. It has our new dynamic shadow boost. It's also going to be in there, along with variable overdrive, which is pretty rare. And compared to any other manufacturer, we have the best comprehensive variable overdrive settings. There's literally 20 variable overdrive settings. No other vendor literally comes close to that level of control and granularity for the motion clarity tuning performance. Okay, but the main thing here is that this monitor will offer even a little bit higher SDI brightness, and it also offers Aura RGB lighting on the back panel, so right here. So if you just want a little bit of even a brighter display, now keep in mind the ACS is already brighter than a lot of standard displays, so I think it already does a solid job, but this one will just be a little bit brighter, and it'll have the Aura RGB lighting. So hence, it's just a $30 delta. So one is $299 and one's $330, so it's not a huge cost difference. But again, at this price point, sometimes that's a big enough deal breaker for some people. So that is just one difference between there. So we'll have the ACS and we'll have the ACG, but fundamentally they're going to be very, very similar. Okay. Then we have one other one here with the XG27 WCMS, which I think is, again, another great option. It's a little bit more expensive. This is a little bit of a higher spec monitor that also throws in a curve here. So this is going to be 27 inches, 1440p, slight curvature on the model, 280 hertz on this guy. And then also maintain the USB-C connectivity, the display widget center, the tripod mount, which also the ACG and the ACS also have on this unit. Still very, very good, of course, performance right here in terms of the DCI-P3. You can see 95%, sRGB is at 125%. It's a very subtle curve at 1500R as well. Overall, I think this is a great option. And like another one of the monitors that we talked about in the update, this is also going to be a fast VA panel. So traditionally, VAs have a much slower response time than traditional fast IPS displays. So here it's a much more competitive actually response rate. So it's still a very solid panel to align also with a higher refresh rate. So in this regard, it is already an improvement compared to, I'd say, the kind of the older original VA based panels, which VA historically had an edge at IPS when you talk about contrast, which if you really cared about blacks in an LCD, a VA was generally going to be superior to that than an IPS or IPS-like type display. So this, I think, is a great option, again, for those that are looking for an immersive gaming display, right? And also maybe looking to step up from like maybe that older like 144, and you've got a higher performing GPU and you want to be able to get into that higher refresh rate. So both of these probably looking to launch within about the next 3 to 4 weeks time frame. Again, very reasonable price points. So guys, that wraps up this week's stream. We talked a lot about a lot of stuff in terms of Computex news. We'll be back next week for some other great updates, bringing to you as well, and of course more information to come on the revamp and the update to the PCDIY group, which again, if you guys are interested, make sure to go ahead and check out our PCDIY group and our featured announcement post in there. We'd love to be able to find out some members from the community that are interested in test piloting of that rollout, as well as maybe testing out things like our new mod group and maybe early sampling strategy and some other things like that. So we'll look for your feedback. But with that, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day, and as always, stay safe and stay healthy. Bye bye, guys. Take care.